what begins to unfold is the story that the greatest threat is often not predators. The greatest threat comes from those like you who are superior to you in some characteristic. The same could be said about people, because this characteristic is inherent not only in the animal world. Study, work, love, people constantly compete with each other in order to be better. People in the office immediately began to discuss that this newcomer was working overtime again. It seemed that he was already on his way to the boss, because he had completed an incredibly difficult assignment. Even the boss was very nervous and worried that the newcomer was already going to his office. The secretary even began to calm him down, saying that he shouldn't worry so much. But the experienced man understood that this was an intern who, in less than 6 months of work here, managed to kick out 3 managers and 1 department head, as if he were some kind of monster. This guy was unusually efficient in his work, as well as wise and organized. All those who tried to plot against him suffered a shameful defeat. His behavior caught the attention of the board of directors, and the boss was afraid that this guy would one day target him. Having hit the table, the head of the department was incredibly angry, because the guy was terribly infuriating him. But still, he calmed down, saying that the secretary was right, because he shouldn't worry about it, since he was the boss and shouldn't be afraid of some idiots. Meanwhile, the boy had already approached the office and asked permission from Boss Lu to go inside. As it turned out, this guy's name was Wang Wan, and he loved to compete very much, so he very quickly completed the report that he had previously been assigned. As soon as the boss heard about the report, he immediately ordered the guy not to come close, because no one could understand how he carried out the assignment so quickly. Some time later, events continued to occur far from the office, where the main character was sitting. The young man thought hard about the fact that no one would have thought that his boss would give up so quickly. Wang Wan felt a little bored in this company, and he even thought that perhaps he should change jobs. Suddenly, he received a message on his mobile phone, and this immediately caused surprise. Seeing this message, the guy even began to get a little nervous, because he had never seen something like this on his phone before. Using a mobile phone, the guy was able to see his characteristics. The system received the data and began a comprehensive assessment. The object met the criteria and was allowed to participate in the competition. Soon after, a notification appeared that some kind of launch had begun, after which a bright light was visible from the phone, which gradually began to absorb Wang Wan. A few seconds later, the young man began to look around, but he had absolutely no idea where he was, as if he had found himself in a completely different world. Because of this, the main character was simply in shock, because something strange was happening to him, as if he was moving to another universe. Suddenly, a girl appeared in front of the guy and exclaimed that she was glad to invite him to a survival game. The kind lady explained to Wang Wan that he had just arrived in the domain of the gods. These domains of the gods were limitless. Players had to plunge into a limitless new world and devote themselves to completing various tasks. One of the tasks was a co-op quest called the Universe of Dragons. There was also a rather unusual quest called Camp 9 House, which looked creepy and mysterious. There was also the option to choose a battle called Glory to the King, where impressive battles took place. In accordance with the various tasks facing the hero, he can unite, compete, confront and even hunt each other. Currently, the game is gaining popularity, so new players who have passed the system selection will appear from time to time. Newly arrived people are among the first players selected by the systems and must now pass the first test. Aware of everything that was happening here, Wang Wan could not distinguish this place from a real one. Even with the use of the most advanced technologies, it was impossible to achieve such an effect, which was surprising. The people present began to be indignant, asking what kind of place this was. Some even ordered to return them back. The rest of the players also had no right to choose. This system has quite radical methods. Having politely asked the goddess's sister, the hero sincerely wanted to ask her one question that interested him. The sister was not against it. However, she was not a goddess, she was also one of the players. Her mission this time was to accompany the other participants in the game to the testing site. Thus, the young man realized that the girl was their senpai, and asked her to tell her what would happen if he failed the tests, and whether it would be possible to leave the game. The girl explained that since this is a survival game, the players cannot leave here, they cannot have any contact with the outside world. However, in between completing dungeons, they can return to their personal space to relax. Their personal space is where they are now. Wang Wan immediately realized that the setting could not be helped, but being locked in such a small space is too cruel. The caring girl also asked not to worry, because most of the dungeons do not pose a threat to their lives. For example, the upcoming test, their reward will depend on how they prove themselves. It will be necessary to complete tasks and accumulate points. These points can be used to expand their personal space, serve as a means of exchange, and also help them create their own personal paradise. But the most important thing in this case was that with the help of upgrade points, each participant could become stronger. Equipment, technologies and outstanding abilities, as well as servants, miracles and even life, all this is available for pumping points. Here you can get everything a person could want, and at the same time become stronger. But these were high-level awards, even the kind girl didn't have them yet. These cards were just for display. At the moment, players as new players will be given 3 random F-rank cards. Among them are various abilities and equipment, all so that the player can quickly become familiar with how everything functions here. My abilities can be immediately mastered, and the equipment will be stored in the inventory. Detailed information can be found by calling up the personal panel. Wang Wan immediately realized that this was his new ability, and he would never have thought that he would be able to meet with something then similar. Once all the players were familiar with their new abilities, it was immediately announced that the game had begun. Now the main character has finally realized that the world is huge and much more interesting than he could have previously imagined. Suddenly, his employees appeared before the young man's eyes, and he realized that something had not gone according to plan. The system immediately notified him that player F233 had been disconnected. It was then that Wang Wan realized that he had returned to the real world. Now the system told him that he needed to reconnect within 10 minutes, otherwise the mission would fail. At that moment, the guy had to go to the continent of the Grey Feather. It was a territory inhabited by a huge number of evil spirits, and the people were a bunch of amateur adventurers who arrived here with the goal of destroying the goblins. However, the goblins cut off any escape routes, luring people into the lair of their lord. It seemed that the hunter and the prey had switched places. Fortunately, the main character still managed to reconnect to the game. The main task was to destroy the goblin lair, and as a reward for completion, points were given depending on the player's success. Any more time, and Wang Wan would have run out of timeout. He would have been reconnected by the system itself, and of course, he would not have been allowed to completely disconnect and return to the real world. At that moment, the guy was not even allowed to take with him some things that he wanted to transfer into the game from real life. Hearing some strange noise nearby, the young man turned around in order to reconnoiter the situation. Turning around, he saw a terrible goblin standing with a club, as if about to attack. In fact, the hero has been disconnected from the game for too long, and the team has already progressed quite far. In such games, even a couple of minutes of AFK can completely change the situation, making further missions much more difficult. In principle, Wang Wan even thought that it was possible to wait until the end of the game in offline mode. This was also a way out. However, it is impossible to observe what is happening, as well as the progress of other players. That is why the young man began to play this wonderful game, and began to gradually approach the first goblin. The little creature even became worried because he felt that someone was approaching him. In order to neutralize his enemy, the IZO hero kicked him straight in the face with all his might. This truly served as an excellent solution, and thus Wang realized that the exam for beginners did not have to be difficult. Goblins are monsters with a child's physique. People just need to overcome their fear and start a battle, so the matter will remain small. Winning will not be difficult. What can we say about real masters, about those who have undergone professional combat training? Because during military service at one university they were taught many combat techniques. After such serious training, the young man was ready to demonstrate his skills to the monster. But as it turned out, the monster turned out to be much smarter, and took out a pistol to shoot his enemy. This turn of events made the guy nervous, because he clearly did not expect that such a small and arrogant creature was capable of something like that. Other goblins decided to go to the aid of their comrade, and used a motorcycle with a machine gun to do this. Because of this, Van tried with all his might to get away from these monsters, because he did not understand why in this world goblins use weapons and ride motorcycles, because he thought that they would walk with sticks and throw stones. The enemies turned out to be much stronger than the main character expected, but his main goal now is to destroy the goblins, and he had to do it with his bare hands. This quest was created primarily to train all players to use the in-game abilities and equipment. The boy turned out to have several suitable abilities. One of them was called a projectile, another keen eye, and the third was a novice bomb. Seeing these cards, the young man realized that his abilities had been changed, and completely different from those given to him at the beginning. The determined Wang accepted to assist and decided to use all his abilities to the maximum. Meanwhile, one of the goblins was about to hit the guy, but as it turned out, it was just a hologram. Not far from the vile enemy was also the same rookie bomb that the young man had just used. There was a huge explosion, and it seemed that all opponents were destroyed. While examining his body in the game space, Van began to realize that when he reconnected to the game, his location remained the same. But since the temporary account number has been changed, accordingly, all information associated with the previous account is reset. The inventory also changed, because reconnecting reset absolutely everything. All this must be due to the fact that the hero was disconnected from the system and it considered him to be dead, so the account was immediately deleted. That is, the young man could reconnect many times, which would be regarded by the system as a new player joining. Now the boy thought that this was a kind of gift for beginners, and in the future this opportunity would no longer exist. Even for a newbie like Wang Wan, it was not difficult to kill many goblins. After all, they were still quite weak. Some goblins had advanced weapons, which made the fight more difficult, but Van was ready for this. Killing fire was used against the goblins, and a fire projectile was also fired. The next technique used was the stone fist, because in this way Wang Wan could endlessly change the game cards and attack the enemy. The opponents were again destroyed, because they could not cope with such inhuman strength. All these magical techniques worked perfectly, and the hero understood that it was necessary to also adhere to this strategy in the future. Now he was going to pass this exam 100% and thereby ensure himself a perfect start in this game. The player's position gradually began to change, and he advanced through the mission at great speed. Then events continued to occur in the underground valley. The temperature in it was 21 degrees Celsius, there was no wind, and there were 27 minutes 53 seconds left until the end of the mission. Some of the players began to interact together and entered into alliances. They acted harmoniously and helped each other. Yushan was very grateful to her savior named Shenyujia, because the wound healed in a matter of seconds, even though this treatment was applied using a technique received by a novice. As it turned out, Shenyujia didn't care at all about this, because in his opinion it was just a lousy game, and if he died, he would still have to be reborn in the future. Another player decided to ask the others if there was a brave among them who could confirm this hypothesis, and asked the others who dared to kill themselves to find out for sure whether they would be reborn again in their personal space. In fact, there was already such an attempt. One person fell off the cliff, and the second disappeared and wanted to observe the further course of events. However, he also disappeared. Accordingly, no one could confirm or refute this hypothesis. Still, the player decided that this was some kind of nonsense, because this entire dungeon is a test only for beginners. Yushan sincerely thought that all this was strange, because she got into this game very unexpectedly, and if not for the other players, she would simply have remained to live out her last minutes in this place. Otherwise, each of the participants was wondering what to do next, because the further they moved, the more likely they were to meet stronger monsters, so they could actually die. The essence of the mission itself was that it was an extermination expedition, but whatever it actually was, the main goal of what was happening was to teach all players how to survive in these conditions. One of the players began to guess that they probably just needed to find a suitable place and wait for the end of the time allotted to them to complete the mission. Thinking about everything that was happening, Shenyujia thought that they should not risk their lives just to complete this stupid mission. It was then that each of the players present realized that they would probably never truly be able to return back to real life. Unexpectedly, the evil goblin decided to make his attack, and, swinging his axe, was about to hit the girl. The frightened men took out their weapons in order to resist the vile monster. But it was already too late, because the main character intervened in this fight and literally beat the villain in a matter of seconds. Yushan watched everything that was happening, and did not even expect that someone else would be nearby and could save her. The young man also immediately drew attention to the girl, who continued to watch him with fear. Gradually, the players realized that this was the player who was not found near the cliff, and he was alive, he also rushed into battle, and probably understood the true essence of this mission. For others, it was quite strange. After all, this guy did not worry about death, did not think about the future, boldly rushed forward, putting everything he had on the line. His will was truly incredible. The bespectacled man realized that Wang Wan had done this on purpose, in order to gather the necessary information and make the right judgments. This truly required incredible determination. The anxious lady also realized that it was player number 1985 named Wang Wan. Some time later, the main character realized that the combination of light boots, a whistle of rapid movement and a high-speed push was simply incredible. However, it was too much for the human body, it was already at its limit, and these skills urgently needed to be replaced. Although he had just seen other players, time was running out for us, and they were chilling there. It seemed that they were not able to compete with him, so he could forget about them. Having pressed the exit button in the system, the young man knew that after the 1000th update, the system began to give him already familiar cards, and it seemed that the set of F-rank cards was not so diverse. The upper limit value of the inventory capacity had long been exceeded, so it was pointless to continue cleaning the entire inventory, and Wang Wan was going to remove all the duplicate items. And once the inventory was cleared, the hero was determined to head to the boss immediately after that. However, judging by the background stories about this boss, he will indeed be difficult to deal with for a newbie. When Van re-entered the game, the mission progress was reset to 0, killing monsters was pointless, and a larger opponent was needed to get a good reward. Nevertheless, the next mission began, because the guy understood that only one battle and the tests of the dungeon would be completed. In order to effectively appear in front of the boss, Van used an F-rank scroll, with the help of which the hero suddenly appeared, as well as a buff within 1 minute after activation of 10% to the power of any attribute from the inventory. The brave youth shouted at the scoundrel to greet his death as the Goblin Lord. The fat goblin really wasn't in the mood to lose, and took out a giant machine gun and then started shooting. Fortunately, the boy expected the boss to have a firearm that he would use in the fight. But Van had an F-rank weapon. It had the opposite effect. After the player takes a defensive stance, the damage aimed at him will be reversed, turning the subject of the attack into its object. The next ability turned out to be a forced action. Although it was too obvious, the hero knew what he needed to do. The F-rank's forced action ability was that the target must complete an early action that had been started, and with the help of weapons, all attacks were reflected at the enemy who had carried them out earlier. Still, during the next attack, Van was wounded. The damage was indeed serious, although he understood that all the bullets had ricocheted. Meanwhile, the goblin boss was in extreme pain as he was hit by multiple machine gun shots. It was necessary to finish with this monster, and then, suddenly, someone used a magical attack on the villain. It turned out that these were the allies of the main character, and they shouted for him to continue fighting, because they had come to help him. Because of everything that was happening, Van began to get nervous, and shouted to the people to wait and not approach, but they still wanted to help, because they were not afraid of death, and were not going to abandon their comrade in trouble. Feeling strong anger towards people, the young man thought that he needed to quickly finish with this monster, because people must want to leave him with nothing. The weapon in the hands of the protagonist had the opposite effect. It was a sharpened blade, sharp, but easily worn out. After the player takes a defensive stance, the damage aimed at him will be reversed. Meanwhile, events continued to occur in the personal space of some other player, where his friend was requesting access. It turned out that Xiao Shi had requested access. She had the status of an invisible warrior. She had the 28th level. The girl who arrived in her personal space wanted to find out from her friend how things were going with her, but she lay there and played some kind of game, saying that she had found a dragon and thought that she could win. But that's not what my friend wanted to hear at all. She asked a question about the newcomers and their success in completing the mission. According to the girl, there shouldn't be any problems, since the newcomers couldn't die anyway. More than 100 people in 23 dungeons, who were soon to finish the mission. Xiao Shi didn't understand at all why her friend was trying so hard, because why pay for the resurrection of every newcomer? In such conditions, not everyone will be able to adapt to the situation. Most people will simply die without coming to their senses, so the mortality rate of the dungeon for beginners is quite high. But all these newcomers had already come to their game, and why not help a little? One revival cost only 10 points, even if each of them died once, it would only be 1,000 points. But the interlocutor did not take into account the expansion of the playing space. It all looks just fine, but no one needs these magnificent landscapes in the midst of a battle. Even the appearance of the card cost a considerable amount of money, although it would seem that the players did not care about it at all. Still, Xiaoxi agreed with her friend. After all, if it brought her joy, then everything is fine. She came to ask about the D-rank artifacts necessary to move to the 30th level. In order to purchase a D-rank artifact, a large number of points were needed. Fortunately, the girl had more than 30,000, but when she looked at her account in the system, she saw only 2,333 points. After thinking a little, they didn't realize that the resurrection of newbies cost 28,000 points, and Xiaoxi immediately wanted to know how much her friend brought them, because in order to spend such a large amount, it was necessary to die literally 100 times. At that moment, the girl only thought that it was all just a dream, everything would be fine, she would just die and everything would be fine. But Xiaoxi was against such an outcome of events, and ordered her friend not to die, because she was not allowed to do this. At the same time, the main character had already completed the mission. In total he received 25 points, as well as a divine box, that is, an additional reward was assigned for the boss. Other players were amazed that for some reason a message appeared stating that the mission was completed, but then they found out that they had simply completed all the tasks. The main character has already received a notification that he has completed the dungeon task for beginners, and has been returned to his personal space. The system congratulated Wang Wan for successfully completing the beginner dungeon task, and now he received a permanent account. The level countdown was started, which made the boy upset. Looking around, the young man realized that this was what was called personal space, although in fact it looked very poor. Fortunately, players could expand their personal space. The price per square meter is 1 point. You can also purchase a huge number of pieces of furniture, decor, landscape variations and more, all in order to make the players stay in the game as comfortable as possible. After thinking for a while, Vaughn realized that there was no need for him to spend precious points on these items if he could quit the game at any time. It was obvious to him that it would be better to spend the points on becoming much stronger. But while the young man did not understand how to spend the points, he decided to ask the system where the store was located. In order to help the newcomer navigate the system, a guide was connected, who said that Wang Wan had become an official player of the boundless domains and gods, and now he would be helped to understand the exchange system. The hero immediately noticed that they had previously had another guide, but Xiaoxi explained that there were some small problems and she would tell him how to use the points he earned. Bonus points are the currency of exchange in the realms of the gods. They can be used to expand your personal space, purchase basic necessities, enhance existing abilities and equipment, exchange for resurrection in dungeons with deadly tasks, and much more. Most importantly, the player can buy gift boxes. However, the level of its contents directly depends on the player's level. Since Van is a new player, he will only be able to open an F-rank box. Because of this, the young man became very angry, since he had to play the lottery and could not buy upgrades for his abilities and equipment. This was indeed the case. However, if he was lucky enough to draw an E-rank card, he would be able to play as comfortably as possible in the early stages. Of course, the hero has just completed the novice dungeon mission, so he may have less than 10 points in hand, which is why he should improve his personal space, exchange a comprehensive monthly existence package, complete missions in other dungeons to get more points. For this explanation, Wang was indeed very grateful, and bowed to the guide as a sign of gratitude. Suddenly, the boy realized that the other players didn't even have 10 points, and with his 25 points and a bunch of F-rank items, his start in this game would be just perfect. While thinking about the advantage over the players, Vaughn also began to think that all these gacha things are for real fools, and now he needs to think about what item he wants to improve. The choice was indeed quite difficult, since it was a lottery, and it was completely unclear what exactly would come out upon purchase. Nevertheless, the hero decided to play the lottery and received a card that he had previously used in battle. It was a nasty bomb, one of the worst F-rank cards you could get. Having opened the gift box, the young man began to think that this was a complete mess and he would be out of luck. In fact, the guy was very lucky because he got an E-rank equipment. It was a special reward, and he had to choose one card to continue. Seeing these magic cards, Van was delighted, but immediately began to think about the choice, because it was quite difficult. The cunning young man realized that he could simply exit the game, wait for the next system notification, and then choose one of the cards based on the situation. Thus, the hero did this. Now he needed to return to the system within 12 hours. It was already almost noon, and now, having an official account, Van could be offline for quite a long time. There was nothing to worry about. Suddenly, the boss appeared and began to closely observe the unsuspecting guy. At this moment, Van did not understand at all why the man was behaving this way. It was quite strange. The evil boss began to smile sarcastically and asked why Wan was sleeping at his workplace. As if nothing had happened, the boy smiled at his boss and asked what was the matter. As it turned out, the man was very glad that he managed to catch the young man, and now he was not a perfect trainee, which is why today he wanted to show him what real hell was. At that same second, a blue-haired woman came running and addressed Mr. Liu. This immediately offended the boss, and he got angry and later said that he was busy and couldn't be called. In fact, the secretary called the man only because the head of the office had arrived. Many people had come with him. They had arrived here to check and were already on their way. Turning around, the boss at the last moment told the main character that this was his lucky day. He was very lucky. Looking at his boss, Wan realized that he had just become interested, and could not just leave it like that, which is why he used a force spell. At the same time, the office workers greeted Lin Xiao and decided to ask whether the board of directors had given the appropriate instructions, but as it turned out, it was an unscheduled inspection. Due to the forceful effect of the spell, boss continued to yell at the protagonist, and told him that he was fired and should leave immediately. The angry man continued to shout for Wan to kneel down and beg him to change his mind. The boy did not react to this at all, and the boss continued to insist that in recent months the rapid rise of the company was the merit of Wang. He had excellent recommendations from the university, and he was so capable that people from the main office were interested in him. The man at that moment did not even suspect that representatives of the company had been listening to him all this time. The boss also mentioned that he took most of Van's credit for himself, but that doesn't mean anything now because he caught him making a mistake and can deservedly throw him out of here. Also, the boss did not forget to mention that the director or those idiots from the main office, he absolutely does not care what they say about this, because the last word will always remain with him. Suddenly, the man began to tremble sharply, as if he realized that powerful people were standing behind him. For a moment, the insolent boss was overcome with fear and almost began to cry with shame. The main character couldn't stand it and started laughing, after which he clapped because of such an incredible performance. The company representative also started clapping as this speech was truly impressive. Absolutely all representatives of the company began to clap, even who were subordinate to the boss. Feeling very embarrassed, the boss first made excuses, later saying that he was just joking, as if it was some kind of prank. Some time later, events continued to occur near the office building. The company representative had already started to leave in his limousine as he had completed his inspection here. After this check, it turned out that that same boss was successfully fired and is now unemployed. Thanks to the ability of F rank, the main character became the general director. He achieved his goal so easily, and he already had a rather sophisticated long-term plan in his head. This plan, to my surprise, turned out to be truly extraordinary, which is why it was so easy. According to Wang's initial plan, the next step was to conquer people's hearts and achieve even more outstanding results. However, he was not interested in that now. Real life pales in comparison to the game, where he has unlimited possibilities and can travel to different worlds. Then it was the weekend, so the young man could afford to play the game he found all night. The biggest advantage of moving up the career ladder is having his own office, so he won't have to worry about losing face in front of his colleagues if he plays a little too hard. Those players who could not leave the game right now were probably in a strange position, and the hero wanted to know about this. On the internet, he began searching for articles about how some people have a collective coma or the sudden death of a large number of people, and as it turned out, there was actually one girl in the news who tried to take away his award. The student lost consciousness after she was given first aid, after which the girl went missing. Hospitals across the city said no patients matching the description were admitted for admission. While watching a video where a girl was hospitalized, the video loading suddenly stopped. As it turned out, the video was completely impossible to watch because it was inaccessible or never existed. The hospitalization probably took place under the strictest control of game representatives. Suddenly, representatives of the Game Development Corporation began to walk into the CEO's office. But as soon as they burst into the office, they discovered that the player was not there at all, as if he had disappeared somewhere. The main character watched the ambulance that arrived at the building of his company. Now the young man understood that reality could also be interesting, because unknown people had just started chasing him. Some time later, events continued to occur at Linjiang University. In the real world, there are equally responsible people who are responsible for sending new players into the system, and the young man understood this. However, for now he had no idea about the details, because any wrong step would only increase the risk for him. The fact is that these people absolutely do not want to be revealed, and keep their position secret. The session was approaching, so the library's packed study room should be a fairly safe place. That is why the students will become an excellent cover for Wang Wan, because this way no one will be able to declassify him. But as soon as he sat down at a desk with several students, they abruptly began to get ready, because they had urgent matters. All the students knew that Wang Wan was a monster who studied 3 majors at once and received maximum scores in all exams. Next to him, they absolutely could not concentrate, because it felt like they would commit a terrible sin if they took a 5-minute break. The main character was really confused, and asked people not to run away from him, because he also didn't come here today to study. One of the girls did not immediately intend to leave, and decided to stay for a while in order to finish her notes. And in order for the girl to definitely stay, the young man used the technique of forced action, because it was very bad if he remained here alone. Thus, thanks to the magical effects of the spell, the stranger exclaimed that she must finish the report at all costs. Her friends began to leave, and wished the girl success, since they did not want to stay in the same room with Van. As soon as the student realized what she had just said, she was immediately confused, because she did not understand why she agreed to stay. The friendly guy greeted her and said that in this case they would try together. At the same time, he understood that this ability was simply incredible. In the real world, it was even possible to control other people. However, now this was a secondary task, and the hero had to gain new abilities and build a unique security system for himself. Now was the time to start the game, since in this place no one could stop him. Soon after, the system was successfully launched, and the young man gradually began to teleport into the game world. After moving, the hero had the opportunity to choose one of the preferred options for the difficulty level. There were 4 options to choose from, namely easy, normal, difficult, and very difficult. Logically speaking, as a beginner, it would be more rational to choose the easy level, so he can familiarize himself with the gameplay and become more savvy in various aspects. However, now there was no time for these childish games, so he decided to choose the most difficult difficulty level. The player chose a very difficult difficulty level, which is why it was necessary to move to the Bloody Tower location. This was the cursed land, where every night the devil comes out to hunt. 9 brave men burst into the castle in order to put an end to the excesses of the evil spirits. However, the devil and his minions did not expect the unfortunate. Wang Wan began to understand that the brave men must destroy the demons, and they, in turn, using the periodically descending darkness that strengthens them, hunt down and kill the brave men. Conventionally this is an ordinary PvP. The game started to launch, and the system detected that the player had not collected the rewards received earlier, so he needed to make a choice as soon as possible. Unfortunately, the young man could not choose a reward after the start of the game, and his cards remained the same. There was no longer that wonderful bug. The Cloak of Sacrifice dealt damage to surrounding enemies, which was very tempting, but in PvP mode it is not the best choice. A lucky coin that can influence the probability of a particular event is a universal thing. However, he no longer has E-rank artifacts, and this coin is not something fundamental that can change the situation at a critical moment. The only thing left was the cannon, but it would be impractical to use it in this dungeon, which made the choice very difficult indeed. And at the same time, the girl was thinking about what the guy was doing not far from her, and why she stayed here at all. If she wants to leave, then she will obviously need to say something. Still, the stranger decided to come up and ask if Van was practicing listening, and not hearing the answer, she said that in that case she would only be in the way. Suddenly, the boy began to fall straight onto the girl, and it was really quite unexpected. For the lady, this event was very shy, since she would never have thought that some stranger would fall straight on her. Because of this, the young lady began to feel very anxious and uneasy. In the game, the young man found himself in a castle, where he lay on a soft bed, which made him very comfortable. It was a castle inhabited by evil spirits, and they actually have pretty good taste in design. The system greeted the main character and wished him good luck in the bloody tower. His personality was a demon. There were a total of 6 brave men, and there were 3 demons. There was a confrontation between 2 teams in the dungeon. There were 9 players in total. The rules of the game were that every hour after the characteristic ringing of the bell, the effect of the blood moon would be imposed on all players. During this period, the brave men would be deprived of one of the senses and the abilities associated with them. After the end of the blood moon, all players can gather at the top of the tower and hold a meeting at which justice will be carried out. After any of the players rings the justice bell, the player with the most participants voting to be eliminated from the game leaves the game. According to the main character, the rules were indeed quite simple, and he immediately remembered them. The tower was full of secrets, clues to identifying the identity of demons, a way to enhance demonic abilities, as well as special rewards. The player's eyes can deceive him, but his instincts will never be able to do this. The brave men had no information about the identity of the demons, and they could only get clues by exploring the tower. That is, not allowing the player to explore the tower is the key to victory, or they just need to fool everyone at the justice meeting. Before the game started, players and demons had 3 minutes to get to know each other. One of the players was called Lu Xingjun. He was a fanatic, his level was 9th, and he wanted to crush all the infidels together. The other team member turned out to be Su Miao. She was level 10, and she wanted to know where the third team member was. Soon they saw the third participant, and Su immediately decided to ask the guy what he was doing here, because he had just passed the tests for beginners, and it was completely unclear how he ended up here. After all, the team members should have approximately the same levels, at least 7th. The hero began to make excuses, saying that he simply chose the last difficulty level in anticipation of more diverse and complex missions, and who would have thought that the selection should be made based on the level of the player. According to the girl, this was indeed quite brave. The reward is really worthy. However, the price of losing is high. As a beginner, Van cannot afford to lose at all due to the fact that he will not be able to pay out that much. A negative score is not fatal, however, he can also receive a blood mark, so he will not be protected by the system and may be more seriously injured in the next mission. Thus, the young man realized that it was advisable to have points in reserve, so that if something happened there would be no negative values. The guide who advised them forgot about such an important thing. Due to the fact that almost all the points had run out, the girl was sad and didn't even know what to do, because now she was bankrupt. The team member began to convince Van that he was very lucky, because she was going to show him what the real game was. Level 10 players were the real bosses in this dungeon. Another comrade also exclaimed that this time he would allow the young man to enjoy the rewards received through his efforts. Smiling kindly, the boy began to assert that he would try to keep up with his team. There was little time left, and they were going to discuss the available information. The place where Lu Xingjun was filled with forbidden literature. For them it was completely useless, so he was going to destroy everything so that it would not fall into the hands of his opponent. The floor was tapped, so he must have been somewhere on the upper floors. Examining the situation, Su Miao realized that she was in a torture chamber. The door was impossible to open, and from the window only the tower and the corridor were visible. Looking out the window, the hero discovered that he was now in the bedroom. The door and windows did not open. It was also impossible to break the glass, and he did not know whether this would change when the game started. Still, Su Miao realized that nothing should change outside the tower. However, the doors will definitely open. The system will not allow other players to expose them immediately, so the players from the brave team should also be scattered in different rooms. The goddess of darkness told Lu Xingjun that they would meet other players very soon, but the system would not allow them to have one-sided advantages, staying in your cancer forever. It was time to start, and the newcomer must at least try to protect himself, and not the two of them will meet near the bell tower and the area follows, because they must be collected and calm, which is why it is necessary to be careful. This level of difficulty did seem high. these guys thought and acted rationally and had clear goals and plans to achieve them, which made Vaughn think that they could be relied upon. He soon realized that the allotted time should have already run out, therefore the doors should be open, the other players should also be in their positions. Opening the door, the young man found a corridor that Su Miao had seen from outside. There was another player nearby who immediately asked the hero if he was really level 1. As they and the team expected, the brave men were already at their points in other rooms. He, as a newcomer, must hide well. They didn't expect anything more from him. In any case, those two looked quite reliable. It was only necessary to bide time and win without any losses. Soon one of the players sensed that a fight had broken out nearby and it was necessary to act. In order to influence the outcome of the fight, a reflective prism was used. But such an attack turned out to be quite slow, which is why Su Miao had an advantage and easily defeated her opponent. Other players immediately realized that those who started the massacre at the very beginning must be demons. One of those present was a military man, and began to aim at the demon with a sniper rifle. The man was immediately stopped because they saw that he was threatening the life of one of the demons. It was Lu Xingjun. He used the black flame. It seemed to him that it was invincible. But there was another player behind. It was a girl who considered Lu too naive, because he revealed his identity. The young man was attacked and realized that it seemed like it was all over, but in his opinion it really was a wonderful battle. After death, the boy literally exploded, and all that was left was dark smoke that spread throughout the room. Thus, one of the demons was killed, and now all that remains is to finish off two. The players were ready to find the remaining two demons and do everything possible to destroy them. As it turned out, Su Miao still managed to destroy one of the players. But when she fought with the player, she was also seriously injured, which is why she was now unable to continue the battle. The sniper made a well-aimed shot, which is why the girl now clearly could not continue to play the role of a demon. Watching everything that was happening, the main character was simply in shock, because he did not understand what had just happened. One of the girls, seeing Van, immediately recognized him, since they had previously met in the newcomer's dungeon. Seeing his old friend, the young man realized that she was an incapable woman who wanted to take away his laurels and award, but her level was already second. This fact greatly confused the boy, because at first glance, the second level is only one level more than his, but on the other hand, the second level is twice as much as the first. They started the game at the same time, and he is Wang Wan, and shepherds the rear ones. All this was not without reason, because while Van was chilling in the real world, the girl managed to find a way to quickly increase her level, or discovered a gap in the rules of the game, or bribed the guide. According to the hero, this girl disguised herself as harmless, but in fact she is a real monster who wants to become stronger and crush everyone in her path. This woman is a real enemy. For the interlocutor herself, it was amazing that Van had the first level, and he had already decided to go to this dungeon. The kind lady nevertheless decided to assume that perhaps the guy also pulled out a lucky ticket. The lucky ticket was artifacts that allowed players to complete random dungeons. It was said that this was the easiest way to get rewards at low levels. Indeed, entering a dangerous dungeon is risky, and if the girl were not afraid to be in her personal space, she would hardly have used them at all. These cards could only be used 3 times. The only problem is that you can get into a dungeon of absolutely any difficulty level. Last time she was on a very easy mission, and she came across good companions who helped complete it. This time the dungeon was of a high difficulty level. She was so nervous, but everything started out quite well, which is why she was very lucky. Other players insulted their comrade, who was too quickly eliminated by the demon. The soldier, in turn, understood that it was necessary to track down the last demon as soon as possible and kill him. A girl from the brave team knew the deceased guy. He was really great because he always helped his team get additional awards. The other guy also had a chance to play with him once. His title of researcher was truly deserved. In such games, the most important thing was to figure out the demon's identity, which he would have no equal in, so Sister Sue decided to get rid of him at all costs. But that idiot noticed that help was approaching too quickly, so he decided to block their passage to gain some time. Soon this battle was over, and everyone was glad that they managed to survive, since the self-destruction technique was quite frightening, and the brave man barely managed to evade. The guy from the allied team really had to try to save other brave men. After listening to the dialogue between the brave men, the young man realized that in this game the personal qualities and individual abilities of each player are extremely important. In that case, those two really tried their best, and in order for their sacrifice not to be in vain, Vaughn had to act. But the main character did not understand at all what benefit a first-level player could have. Fortunately, he had the ability of a demon. It was the effect of the blood moon, which enhanced all abilities by 150%, even with his level, and with this buff it would be difficult to get rid of anyone. Then he decided that the only way out was to explore the tower and improve his abilities to the maximum. And at the same time, it is necessary to allow other players to kill each other in order to win the mission in the easiest way. Coming closer to the other players, the young man decided to ask them a question, then, how players like them could be useful, because they had been in this game recently, so they didn't know what to do. Looking at these two newcomers, everyone was shocked, because everyone had forgotten that there were players of such a low level on their team. The newcomers were instructed to simply explore the area and wait for the meeting. That was their task. The hero agreed to this, because he barely saw how other players fought. He immediately thought that their lack of combat power and experience would only limit the overall potential of the team. However, fortunately, everything ended in the team's favor. This was indeed the case. This time there are two newcomers with them, who cannot fully compete in the battle, but it is unclear why three demons decided to split up. 3 for 4 is a pretty good deal. Laughing, Vaughn said that the two of you were quite strong opponents and could only sacrifice themselves if they had some kind of ace up their sleeve, meaning the remaining third demon should also be incredibly capable. This demon could probably be strong enough to get rid of absolutely all the brave men. Now players have begun to think that some of them are demons. With the strengthening of the blood moon, the soldier's abilities will be truly incredible. But according to the soldier, Tony didn't try to attack at all. That's what was really amazing. The keeper himself, named Tony, said that if he were a demon, he would not have saved anyone. Watching all the arguments, Wang realized that the worst-case scenario would be if all the players decided to work together. Since doubt had already settled in the hearts of each of them, this would greatly increase his chances of success. At that same second, someone shouted that all the players in this room were a bunch of scum. The stranger used his magical abilities and took the main character by the head with a stone hand. Using a stone fist, he hit the young man right on the head with all his strength. This blow was truly impressive. It came as a shock to all the brave men that someone was capable of something like that, and the soldier immediately began to aim at the stranger. The crazy guy believed that if he were a demon, then he and Su Miao would have dealt with them long ago, like a bunch of scum who were following the lead of some newcomer. According to Lin Yao, the last demon was a beginner who had the first level. It was obvious that he himself could not fight, so the only way out was to fool the others. Trying to get up after the attack, the young man decided to ask what was the point of doing all this, because even if there were only 2 people in the final vote, it would be easy to figure him out. The impudent guy did not tolerate this, and again grabbed the newcomer with his stone hand. Feeling very angry towards Wang, Lin Yao shouted that non-entities were not allowed to speak. Fortunately, another team member decided to stand up for the newcomer and cut the stone hand. This attack was truly incredible. Van immediately thanked the girl, but if this continues, then he will not be able to continue to act according to his original plan. Now Wang Wan only had 11% of his life left, but it was completely unclear why this guy wouldn't just kill him. His first attack took away more than half of his life, but this time he was definitely holding back. The other players believed that they were all beginners once, and asked Lin Yao to stop acting like this. After all, this was just a game, and who knows, maybe they will be able to play again in the future. After analyzing the situation, the young man realized that Lin Yao was not completely sure, and if he killed an innocent person who might turn out to be one of the brave men, then the others would immediately attack him. It may seem that the brave team has an advantage, however, in the game, this does not matter at all. Judging by this guy's temperament, he prefers to act alone, but he has to come to terms with the present state of affairs. He was not like the players who had already come to terms with the in-game system and the principles on the basis of which everything here functions. He was different from those who really consider this game just a game. This person really wants to win. He wants to be a winner no matter what. Turning to his new teammates, the young man exclaimed that there was no point in hanging around here, and they could split up and explore the tower, since at the beginning of the game there was a mention of additional rewards scattered around. But another team member said that this way it would be easier for the demon to kill them one by one, and the player from the demon team would definitely hide the clues he found. At that very moment, Lin Yao said that they needed to split into 2 participants, each one would watch their partner, and when the blood moon began, they would need to stay together. In order to make sure that the partner, like the survivor, cannot move in the dark, the demon will either reveal himself, starting to act, or they will be able to find clues and safely eliminate them. Thus, the girls became partners, and one of them even decided to hug as a sign of union. The guy with glasses said that in that case he would take care of the second newcomer, and the soldier did not mind. But the main character exclaimed that he wanted to go with Lin Yao, which made him at a loss. The reason was that Lin was the strongest here and Wang couldn't fight, and he was going to bet his life in this game so that they would know which team he was playing for, in case he decided to target someone and the strongest as soon as the blood moon comes. This game was very interesting, which is why Lin Yao happily agreed to such a union. Soon after, the 2 girls explored the entire 4th floor. The main character, together with his disgruntled ally, explored the 2nd and 3rd floors, but the soldier and the guy with glasses explored the 1st floor and the lobby. On the 4th floor, everything seemed abandoned, as if no one had been in this place for a long time. Looking at all these burnt books, the girl understood that the demon probably decided to set them on fire, although there were a lot of clues in this place. The other girl couldn't figure out exactly what clues they could find about the demon's identity, as if they could find out his name. Coming closer to her partner, the kind girl said that she could call her Mao Mao, because she was not so experienced as to call her surname, since she had visited no more than 10 dungeons. She understood the state of the new girl, and asked her to relax while here, and it may be unusual, but very soon she will understand how cool the game is, and since they are here anyway, they can get the most out of it. As for the clues, according to Mao Mao's experience, it could be this or that thing that begins to react when a demon is nearby. That is, in the girl's opinion, it was necessary to look for some artifacts. Suddenly, bright magical lights began to appear behind the lady, as if some monster was approaching. The team was very frightened by this outcome of events, because they did not know what to do in this situation. Fortunately, Mao Mao was able to react and easily finished off the enemy, who appeared quite unexpectedly. The difficulty level of the dungeon was not very high, so there shouldn't have been too many monsters, and at least they definitely shouldn't have caused much damage. Meanwhile, events continued to happen on the 2nd floor, where things were quite strange. The protagonist's ally was in shock as they were initially attacked by crazed rats in the cafeteria, then by a bouncing chest, and now by animated armor. Wang Wan pretended to be innocent and told Brother Lin to continue fighting, because he was the strongest warrior of all the brave men. At this moment, the guy was offended, because the newcomer did not help him at all and was inactive. As it turned out, the newcomer had a cunning plan. Now the most important thing for his ally was to protect him. If he accidentally died during the research and it turned out that he was a newcomer, all suspicions would be directed at him. He understood this perfectly well. Turning to his ally, Lin decided to ask him if he was deliberately going to fall into one of the traps, but the young man said that even if he wanted to do this, he did not know where these traps were placed. Thinking about everything that was happening, Lin realized that someone had done something and cursed him, but the beginner's effect is not enough to hook him. They only have F-rank abilities that are useless, so the demon is really someone from those 3. The plan really turned out to be excellent. Wang Wan could use his ability forever, activating all the mechanisms that came within its range of action, since the lucky coin was an E-rank item. Now the main character didn't even have to fight, he could simply hide from traps. This tower should be full of artifacts that will help Van become much stronger. After thinking a little, the heroes remembered that this was the habitat of demons. The description indicated that the brave men were a group of people who came here to fight the demons. But in this case, it is completely unclear why there is a bell of justice in the lair of demons to condemn the demons themselves. It was 49 minutes into the game. There were 11 minutes left before the first blood moon. The meeting of justice was about to take place, and there were only 6 players left. The whole search took quite a long time. It really took about an hour to search the entire 2nd floor. Still, the main character was very happy, because he finally managed to find something useful. As it turned out, it was a plot artifact, which was called the Devil's Contract. It was necessary to obey your desires and pay for greed. This decision was not easy to make, since there was a price to be paid by making a deal with the devil, and there was a risk of being caught. Suddenly, an ally of the protagonist saw that he had found something and, using his magical abilities, ordered him to give up the find. According to the newcomer, this was generally unfair, since he also gave the previous 3 finds to his partner. At least it was ugly on his part, but Lin was cruel and ordered to give the thing, or he would break Van's legs and drag him along with him. The young man nevertheless agreed to such conditions, because he understood that it was better to give up this scroll, but his legs would be intact. Lin Yao believed that if the newcomer was truly who he said he was, then he had nothing to worry about, since he would protect him and lead their team to victory. Now they had a little more time to explore the 3rd floor, but Wang should have remembered that he had to be in the field of view of his partner. The task of appropriating the artifact for himself was quite difficult, but fortunately, the hero managed to remove suspicions from himself and stop worrying about being stabbed in the back by it. There was just a problem, and it was that under the close supervision of his partner there was no room for maneuver. At the moment, the lucky coin was fully charged, so he could not use it. If something went wrong, the ally would immediately notice. Events continued to happen on the 3rd floor, and the guy noticed that those 2 demons managed to have a good time at the beginning of the game, since there was a hole in the wall. Su Miao was in this building, and the person she killed should have appeared from one of the neighboring rooms. As soon as they met, a fight immediately broke out. Looking around the entire area, Lin Yao could not believe that anything could be found in this pile of rubble. At the moment, they had little time left, and they were going to check the next room and find a place to wait out the blood moon. Soon after that, they found themselves in the guest bedroom, and the hero realized that this bedroom was not as luxurious as the one on the 2nd floor. After looking at the room, the young man realized that there was probably some room next to the torture room. The smart guy suggested that this bedroom was smaller in size than the torture room, so there must be a niche somewhere. The insolent ally exclaimed for the newcomer to shut up, because he did not need any prompting. Moving towards the secret room, Lin ordered Wang to go with him, not to dare deviate from the route. Having discovered this room, the ally was simply shocked, because it was quite strange. As if nothing had happened, the young man also went down to the secret room and asked if there was anything interesting here. It turned out that it was a sacrificial altar, and the room itself was incredibly dark. Soon after, the bell rang and justice was about to begin. The blood moon also began, and as it turned out, the main character saw everything. The young man saw everything as he played for the demon team and had the ability to navigate the darkness of the blood moon. Looking at his ally, Van realized that in fact he did not see anything at all, but pretended to in order to catch him off guard and catch him. And if he had not managed to realize this in time, his ally would have already killed him. He could not relax even for a minute. Suddenly, the main character started screaming for help as something attacked him from behind. In fact, it was Lin himself who was to blame for allowing Wang complete freedom of movement. There were some entities nearby, which were probably also demons, and the young man continued to shout that he needed help, because he was about to be killed. The ally did not understand at all why Van was rushing around the room, because he could not see anything at all, and they needed to stay close to each other. Thanks to the young man's dexterity, he was able to find the demon code, and thus a new artifact was obtained. Meanwhile, the ally was seriously angry, and was ready to destroy this room completely. One of the strongest warriors in the brave team continued to fight against the small demonic creatures. Soon the battle was over, and the boy was very grateful to his ally for saving him. Unexpectedly, Lin decided to take revenge for this act, and struck with his stone fist not far from Wang. Approaching closer, the enraged ally exclaimed that if his partner continued to play the fool and force him to waste his abilities, he would finish off the loser. Continuing to play the fool, the main character apologized to his partner, saying that he had only recently been in this game, so nothing could be done. At the same time, the other team was discussing whether it was necessary to say hello to the two who were exploring the 1st floor, but the soldier believed that the blood moon would soon begin, so they needed to stay away from the others. The protagonist's ally believed that they needed to find a place where they could wait out the bloody moon, and Van was not against it. There was 1 minute left before the blood moon effect set in, and Van's team came to the security room. They could stay here for a short time, and it was necessary to lock the door leading to the punishment cell. If their team is attacked, then the security room is the best choice, regardless of what they decide to do, fight back or defend. Inspecting the area, the young man suggested that probably other members of the brave detachment should be hiding nearby. But Lin didn't know where the others were hiding. After all, if people's brains had not yet completely melted, then they would hide. No one in their right mind would run in sight of the demon while the effect of the blood moon was in effect. The hero continued to think that he only had approximate information about the whereabouts of other players. It seemed that everything would depend only on his luck, and it was time to start this game. Seeing that the ally was standing near the balcony, Lin immediately decided to find out why he was fiddling around here, as if he was waiting for a demon to swat him. Suddenly, the young man exclaimed that he was waiting for Lin to make sure that this room was completely safe, so that it would not happen that this, like their previous one, would be full of demonic circles. In order to protect himself from the demon, Lin Yao immediately began to attack, as he began to suspect his partner of lying to him. Not understanding how this was possible, the comrade decided to find out how Ven understood that it was a demonic circle. Using a forced action, the hero exclaimed that this was, of course, just a guess and he did not know what it really was. But the force ability did not affect his partner, and he continued to hit with his stone fist. As it turned out, Lin Yao had a strong mind technique, and the F-rank ability could not affect him and would not harm him in any way. Now there was no point in the young man resisting. Lin assumed that Wang was being controlled by another player, which was a demon. Perhaps he was even doing this for some kind of reward. At the time of this conversation, the boy was literally hanging from the balcony, and was on the verge of death. Because it was difficult to hold on, Ven let go of the railing he had clung to survive. After he let go of the railing, he immediately began to fall, and it seemed that he would die immediately. The ally was afraid for his partner and began to use his magical abilities. At the same time, the main character was thinking that after the groups were formed, that girl immediately decided to go to the top floor, but Lin Yao did not object, even though on the second and third floor they are the most vulnerable and unprotected from attacks at long distances, which is not his specialty. However, now, Wang Wan had to admit that his partner's attacks, even at a long distance, were quite powerful, one of them being a rock cannon. Soon after this, the blood moon began. The brave men were swallowed up by darkness. I give the demon strength. Finally, everything was ready, and Van was really glad that everything happened that way. In order to get a little luck, he tossed a coin, and now it was activated. Thanks to the coin, absolutely any attack was dodged, which is why the young man turned out to be safe and sound. Gradually he began to rise to the floor from which he had just fallen in order to deal with his partner. The determined guy wanted to do everything possible to win this battle. The attack from Lin Yao continued, and the brave man used all his skills to fight her off. Unfortunately, the backfire blade was broken and there was no longer any way to fight back with it. Gradually, the attacks began to hit Van directly, causing him to scream in pain because it was unbearable. The fog of war after the battle gradually began to dissipate, and soon we will find out what really happened to the main character. The effect of the blood moon gradually began to dissipate, and Lin Yao continued to think that his partner was a demon. But it was quite strange for the guy that there was no notification from the system, as if Van had not yet died. Now the partner was going to wait until the end of the blood moon and kill Wang Wan with his own hands. Meanwhile, events continued to occur on the first floor in the living room. Fortunately, the hero still survived. He had many F-rank artifacts that could be useful in such situations. He also had a restorative potion, thanks to which he was able to replenish his vitality. Initially, the boy thought of using the coin in the justice competition to change the outcome of the vote. However, it seems that this coin may be much more useful than he can imagine. The smart guy really hoped that his luck could really play a major role and make events move in the right direction. At the same time, events continued to occur on the fourth floor, namely in the tea room. On the first floor, the other team members began to guess that the demon was Lin Yao, since only he could attack with such stones. The soldier decided that it was necessary to retreat, because in the darkness they would not be able to fight back the demon. As it turned out, at that moment Wang was on the first floor, namely in the storeroom, so that in this confusion he would not be accidentally injured. He decided to retreat temporarily. This moment could also be used to receive story rewards. Now in the hands of the young man was a plot artifact called the Code of Demons. These were writings that were too complex for the common man to understand, They were supposed to pave the way for the owner to all the secrets of the tower. If the code is owned by a demon player, his abilities during the Blood Moon receive an improvement of 200%. There were 4 minutes and 37 seconds left before the end of the Blood Moon, and events continued in the underground courtyard. A brave knight in armor decided to head into battle to one of the most difficult locations. While examining the area, the armored warriors discovered that there was a luminous tree nearby. There was also a monster nearby, which immediately attacked the traveler and decided to attack him. Fortunately, the armor was able to save the travelers from the unexpected attack, which is why he was safe. The impudent monster really did not expect such an outcome of the battle, which is why he paid heavily for his behavior. The attack from the traveler followed instantly. He took out his huge mace and hit the demon right in the face. As it turned out, it was the main character, and he realized that in this quest all the monsters were sick. There should have been a clay monster and a skeleton at the location, but even this demon decided to attack him unarmed. The young man could not believe that by covering his red face, he could not hide his gentle and kind character, and these monsters judge a book by its cover. Thus, in this stupid quest there is not even identification of one's own or someone else's. If it were not for the help of the power of the Bloody Moon, and these armor with artifacts, it is unlikely that Van would have been able to break through it all. Still, the time of the Blood Moon ended, and the buff also disappeared, but it was good that the young man managed to kill absolutely all the monsters. If the guy is lucky, then everyone on Earth is fighting together now, and no one will remember about the unfortunate traveler who is delving into the plot of the game, which is why he decided to return to the location by discarding his equipment. Even if success causes quarrels among the rest of the group, the young man still has a task that he cannot solve because he is not strong enough. According to the rules of this quest, it is necessary to weed out all the brave souls who remain alive. And if the hero wanted to win, then he must at least eliminate one person by challenging him to a duel. With the help of the Blood Moon buff, that bulky armor and item level F, he will still be able to fight with different monsters. But if he uses the same method against other players, he will die. These cruel killers will definitely bring him to the grave. Therefore, the only way to win was to get as many strength bonuses as possible in this quest. While exploring the map, another sacrifice hall was discovered. The artifact must have been somewhere in this room, and the boy began to restore contact with it. Suddenly, some entity began to appear, which said that it would do everything possible to kill the rest of the travelers to show their devotion to the kingdom of the dead. If you activate this item, then all the demons will immediately come out. It's good that it was hidden in this dark room. If some daredevil took it, then the end would come for everyone. The main task of the demons was to anoint the golden bell of justice with the defiled blood. After completion he wanted to reward the demon with the ability to summon the Blood Moon once. It could give additional strength. An additional mission was called Defiled Blood. It was necessary to anoint the golden bell with defiled blood from the underground blood pond. The easiest way to cover the blood should be at least 50%. However, the main character was still forced to refuse such an offer. Because of this, a demon appeared in front of the young man, who asked whether a person is really ready to accept his death, because this is the retribution for betrayal. Wang has learned that this entire tower is the territory of demons, and it seems that the corrupted blood has also been ready for a long time. It will be easier for them to simply destroy this golden bell. If the main demon wanted to start a war between demons and humans, it is very strange to give the guy demons that are simply useless, to the point that all the other demons inside the tower will constantly participate in the assault. In addition, Van understood that the demon did not enter into any contract with him, which means that he wanted to place all the blame on him, and apparently, this watch belongs to someone with whom the main demon himself would not dare to fight. Feeling intense rage towards the man, the demon struck with his fiery sword. As it turned out, this blow missed the target, and the hero finally assumed that the golden bell belonged to the leader of the demons. The demonic entity nevertheless praised the man for being very smart, but did not understand that since he had guessed the whole idea. Apparently, this area is mostly inhabited by subordinate demons, and they make deals with people in various ways to obtain their souls. The appearance of the golden bell interfered with the activities of the demons, which is why they want to get rid of it. But in fact, it is not necessary to use such methods to get souls. It is enough to find only your own unique path, strengthen the channels of energy accumulation. The real cost will change. then using their own levers, the demons will be able to find an area in which there will be strong ones. They need to discover something unknown to anyone field of activity. These words really impressed the main demon. He didn't even quite understand what the man was talking about. Thus, the young man managed to prove that he knew how to collect more souls. Wang Wan introduced himself and said that he would become the best subordinate of the demon. If he only set a goal, he would immediately lead everyone to success. The main demon thought seriously, but he needed to make a small investment, and then he began to think about what a person would still need, more power or a position in the underworld. Bowing his head, the boy asked, can he really discuss the reward until he has shown the result, and asks only this in order to better serve the demon. Wang Wan's main goal was to meet the owner of the Golden Bell, because in order to make a deal, it was necessary to find the strongest of the demons. Meanwhile, the Golden Bell was fully charged and the first appearance of the Blood Moon was about to begin. Gradually, Lin Yao began to come to his senses, and he was in the guardhouse. The former ally was very angry, because he decided that Van wanted to laugh at him, and now wanted to show him who was in charge. Having opened the door, the partner was going to do everything possible to take revenge on the main character, but someone had already begun to attack him. It was a soldier's bullet, and this outcome of events was immediately washed away by Yao, because he did not expect to be attacked, but used a protective force field. Shooting at the target triggered a one-time self-defense ability. The bullet's trajectory was curved, and the bullet hit the target's hand. Starting to laugh evilly, Lin Yao guessed that the soldier was the demon and was glad that he revealed his identity. The stone fist immediately began to attack its target in order to kill the so-called demon. The enemy turned out to be much more agile than Yao thought, which is why the soldier began to maneuver. With the help of his high-caliber cannon, the man managed to literally crush the enemy's stone hand. Gradually, the stone tools began to break, which made them no longer usable. Seeing his new opponent, the young man realized that he was probably trying to escape. Using kinetic abilities, Yao can once again control even a destroyed stone hand. A few minutes later, events continued to occur on the fourth floor, namely in the main hall. The tired guy continued to walk towards his goal, and thought only about destroying the demons. Suddenly, he felt that someone else was present behind him and was about to attack. As it turned out, it was Mao Mao, who was about to strike with her blade. Injured glasses guy also thought that Lin Yao was a demon. After all, he had revealed his identity during the Blood Moon, and there was no point in pretending anymore. The Guardian could use his E-level magical skills, thanks to which the enemy was literally immobilized. All this only happened because Lin Yao injured one of his allies, and now he deserved retribution. After another attack, the young man tried to justify himself, saying that he had not attacked anyone. It was then that Yao remembered his former ally, and it was not surprising that he constantly clarified the position of the others. Moreover, before the Blood Moon, this guy showed up at the very last moment. It was then that Lin Yao realized that it was Wang Wan who was the demon. Continuing to make excuses, the young man insisted that the new guy had fooled him and forced him to attack his allies in the dark, and that freak had dared to outwit him. The soldier believed that in a situation where nothing was visible, Yao decided to randomly storm the others, guided only by a theoretical attack plan, and he was probably very lucky that he stumbled upon the allied shelter. Everyone understood that this could not be an accident, since Yao hit the target so successfully, and if not for his self-defense magic, the guy with glasses would already be dead. Now everyone understood that the demon simply did not have a convenient moment to arm himself, because he himself said that his target was that new guy, and he let it slip. It was then that Lin Yao realized that he had probably been tricked, and since he was suspected, the Golden Bell was already charged anyway, and they could rise up to ring the bell and bring justice. And then there was the opportunity to use the stone puppets at the top of the tower and destroy the demon. Since Yao really wanted to be killed, in this case he himself could ring the Golden Bell. After all, it was clear from him that he really wanted to do justice on his own. Meanwhile, Yushand continued to walk up the long stairs, and thought about how she always ran in the morning to lose weight. She needed to use the golden hammer to strike the Golden Bell, and at that moment they were going to detain Lin Yao to bring justice. Nevertheless, the girl successfully reached her goal, and was glad that she succeeded. Now all that remained was to ring the bell. Looking around, Yushan saw that Mao Mao was also here, and did not understand why she took so long to get up. In fact, at that moment she was attacked by the enemy, which is why she flew up several tens of meters from the force of the blow. As it turned out, the villain summoned a stone golem, and the player Yushan was eliminated. Her title was Brave. The player Tony was also eliminated. His title was Brave. The last player to be eliminated was Mao Yiwen. She also had the title of Brave. Feeling very tired after a long battle, Yao could not believe that everyone he destroyed were not demons. Bowing before the master, Yushan surrendered and handed him a golden hammer, saying that he could do whatever he wanted. Laughing at the outcome of the battle, Yao still admitted that he had indeed underestimated his opponent. This opponent was precisely Wang Wan, who was watching everything that was happening from above. Jumping from the place where the bell was located, the hero exclaimed that it was 3 against 1 and Yao emerged victorious. It seems that those 3 were no good at all. The winner considered himself a real specialist, and asked not to compare him with those scum that cannot even rationally use the provided artifacts. Turning his head, Van wanted to know what his interlocutor meant. Players could receive various items as they progress through the game, be it some tools or equipment. But they can also receive specialized artifacts that will turn them into specialists in a certain field, thereby distinguishing them from the crowd. These artifacts can only be obtained in dungeons, and if Van did not want to become the same trash as those 3, then he was recommended to start collecting these artifacts now. The young man thanked his interlocutor for the information, but decided to find out why he told him all this. As it turned out, Yao believed that Wang was only at the first level. He could not have enough funds to pay penalties for losing. So the next game would be a survival game for him, but in any case, it didn't seem like the guy cared that much. In order to confront the demon, the enemy summoned his giant golem, which was truly terrifying. The Yao children will be looking forward to their next game to finally crush Wang. Touching the golden bell, the main character asked his interlocutor not to speak as if he had already won. Once the survivor deals with the demon, the game will be over, and it doesn't matter if he has 3% of life. Even so, Van is not an opponent for him. The smart guy suggested that if he rang the bell of justice, he would nominate himself, and Yao would immediately kill Yushan to protect himself. Listening to all these conversations, the girl was simply in shock, because she understood that in any case, most likely she would die. But there was only one way out of this situation, and it was that Yushan had to vote for Wang Wan's innocence. The ringing of the golden bell was successfully carried out, after which voting was to begin. After the bell began to move, some kind of potion appeared in its place. It was a potion of joy. With its help it was possible to calculate what emotions were currently in the person on whom it was applied. This is how Lin Yao discovered that his opponent was indeed a demon. Because he began to laugh, and it was obvious that he was very happy about this outcome of events. In a few seconds, the two opponents were to clash together in an unequal battle. At the moment, it was completely unclear who would win this fight, a demon or a human. The protagonist's opponent used a silicon garden, thanks to which he made the task of his enemy more difficult. The young man decided to use a different tactic and used the demon code, summoning the blood moon. A blood moon appeared. Wang Wan's strength increased, causing him to effectively attack a person. Sensing that the enemy was approaching, Yao used the furious breakthrough technique to repel the attack. Using their agility, the heroes were able to dodge many stones that were flying towards him. In fact, the boy understood that his opponent had a couple more tricks. Using such a reckless technique that captured a huge territory was at least stupid. Thanks to this, Wang pretended to be reckless and activated the blood moon effect at the last moment, thereby confusing Yao. This must have been the enemy's last trump card. Otherwise, knowing him, he would have continued to attack from a distant position. But this was nothing compared to the fact that, in theory, he could scatter stones around the entire perimeter to determine Van's location by sound. In any case, it didn't matter, because the main character believed that in the next 10 minutes he would be strong enough to kill Lin Yao. Suddenly, the guy felt a sharp pain and blood appeared on his face. Watching the enemy, Van realized that he could not attack him, because he stood motionless. The value of the number of lives also did not change, but there was blood and pain. Experiencing great fear, the young man nevertheless realized that probably someone had wounded his body in real life. At the same time, events continued to occur in the university library. The student tried with all her might to concentrate, because since she decided not to sleep today, she needed to sort out her affairs as soon as possible. But because of the interfering guy, it was quite difficult for her to concentrate, because he leaned on his whole body and continued to sleep. Trying to wake up her friend, the girl used all sorts of methods, but it was unsuccessful, although the attempts continued for more than an hour. Suddenly, someone shouted loudly that the student had the courage to come here, and it looked like she was having a great time with her boyfriend. It turned out that this was said by some girl who clearly did not like her interlocutor. Feeling awkward, the girl with glasses decided to find out from the stranger who she was. Starting to get very angry, the red-haired lady shouted that her name was Sue Wan, and last time she was reported on and punished for it. Sue absolutely couldn't understand who needed these broken headphones, but this scoundrel immediately ran to complain. The teachers even wanted to call the police. Trying to somehow get out of this difficult situation, the girl began to apologize. They say that she did not know that this situation would cause inconvenience. Still, the guy decided to reassure his girlfriend by saying that she should cool down a little, because they are here to study. Coming closer to the girl with glasses, the scoundrel apparently started something and was going to take revenge for the insult of his bride. As it turned out, this was indeed the case. The scoundrel grabbed a chair and hit the main character on the head with all his might. The blow really turned out to be very strong, because of which the guy fell to the floor and was still unconscious. Approaching closer to the main character, the girl tried to find out if he was okay, and at least somehow wanted to bring him to his senses. Still, the enemy came to his senses and didn't understand why he hit this guy in the first place. After all, they just came here to talk. Seeing that the enemy was not moving, the villain began to shout that an ambulance must be urgently called to save the young man. As it turned out, all this time someone was watching Van through a video surveillance camera, and confirmed that the target was in a state of sleep. They wanted to attribute the previously slow movement to communication interference. An employee of the company that produced the game began to prepare and was about to enter the library. Having entered the system menu, the hero tried to exit the game, but exiting the game would be regarded as a failure of the mission in this dungeon. Still, the young man decided to calm down, because now he is in the student library. He cannot be in danger of anything serious. Most likely, he just fell and hit himself or something like that. The people who were previously in the company could pose the greatest threat to him, but he didn't think that they would decide to show up at the student library out of the blue. The real body didn't seem to be injured anymore, so if he left the game now and everything that happened turned out to be just an accident, it would be quite sad. But only if it's all about the same people. In any case, if the hero does not receive a high-rank reward for completing this mission, then he will have no chance in the fight against them. Taking a deep breath, Van still realized that the points would go negative and all his efforts would be in vain. This made the situation even more dangerous. Therefore, everything was obvious, because of which it was necessary to act. The enemy had to be killed as soon as possible in order to exit the game and understand what was happening in real life. Using his magical abilities, the boy decided that he would immediately complete the mission of this dungeon. Soon after, Wang Wan approached the revered Hell Lord, saying that he hoped for his favor according to their contract. Yao continued to think about the actions of his opponent, and did not understand why he hesitated and did not attack. Trying to feel at least some movement, the enemy could not determine that Van had moved at least a little. Laughing, Yao still suggested that the demon was going to play a game of endurance, as if he thought that he did not have enough moral strength, but in his opinion this was underestimating the enemy. The contract with the Lord of Hell was successfully concluded, and now had to be carried out. Continuing to be blind, Yao did not even suspect what awaited him next, because the outcome of the battle was already a foregone conclusion. Suddenly, an incredibly bright light appeared around the top of the castle. Looking at this light, the girl literally went blind, because it was too light. Some black feathers gradually began to fall from the sky, which made the lady even more scared. Looking around, she saw that Wang Wan was standing motionless, and it seemed that he was able to defeat his enemy. Initially, the hero wanted to use this ability as a last resort. However, he needed to deal with the enemy as soon as possible and nothing could be done. Thus, the player named Lin Yao was eliminated from the competition and could no longer participate. The joyful ally began to run up to the young man and shouted that now they had won and could get out of this game. It was only shortly after that she saw a notification that player Lin Yao was playing for the Brave team, and the remaining number of players was 2. The voting time had expired. Looking at the girl, the hero began to use forced magic to make her calm down a little. The magical abilities immediately affected her, and she literally could not move, not understanding what Van wanted to do to her. Having placed several bombs on the girl, Van said that they could only meet in the next game. Hiding behind the bell, he took out the remote control for the bombs, and wanted to end this, because he must return to his personal space as soon as possible and prepare to return to the real world where danger could await him. Only at that moment did the girl realize that Wang Wan was the last demon and a liar. Waving his hand to his interlocutor, the young man said that, after all, he only had the first level, therefore, he could not afford to pay a fine of 50 points. Hearing about this, the lady immediately thought about it, because she did not have 50 points to pay the fine. The main character did not believe her, saying that she was just acting like a nice girl, but in fact was a real monster who wanted to become stronger and crush everyone in her path, secretly improving her abilities. She would go over their heads for the sake of her goal. The interlocutor immediately felt awkward and felt that she was being treated rather rudely. Van didn't care at all about this, because it was no longer possible to deceive him, since he deserved the victory. Feeling very anxious, the girl continued to convince him that she really did not have glasses, and that she would probably die after this mission. This immediately made her sad, since the interlocutor clearly had no foresight and was unable to accumulate the required number of points for revival. Nevertheless, the young man decided to take pity and asked what percentage of the girl's map research. "I don't understand why this question is asked," she replied that the research percentage is only 15%. This was truly unfortunate, as there was too little time to explore the entire map. Van, as it turned out, decided to help his former partner, and grabbed her hand, saying that they had too much time left. Now they could explore the map in an accelerated mode. For 100% of the research it was possible to get 50 points, this should be enough to pay the fine. This outcome of events really made the lady happy, but in the next game she will have to rely only on herself. Seeing the abyss in front of her, the girl did not understand what was going on. After all, they had to go down the stairs because they had to start from the bottom. Like a true gentleman, Van threw the girl off the castle, saying that they had too little time for such formalities. Thus, the girl began to scream incredibly loudly, because she was afraid of falling into such an abyss. Meanwhile, events continued to occur in the real world, where an ambulance had already arrived at the university premises. Doctors began to take the main character away because someone started a fight in the library. Van's comrade also arrived, and was very worried about him, since his friend was unconscious. Soon I really arrived quite quickly, and everyone hoped that the young man would be okay, but as it turned out, the offender just a few seconds ago called an ambulance. These masked people may not have been emergency personnel, and they ordered Wang's comrade to move away from the car. Approaching one of the hospital representatives, the girl with glasses decided to find out if she could go with Van. Glancing arrogantly at his interlocutor, the doctor told her to get into the car. At that moment, the girl did not even suspect who these people really were, and what could await her next. By returning to the events of the past, we can find out the history of how the fight against demons took place earlier. Walking along the bloody corridor, the man reasoned that having received this power, it would be as if he would be bewitched by the devil himself and would not hesitate to take the life of his opponent. But people were still stupid and did not understand what abilities demons had. One man decided to challenge the demon, and approached him, asking if he wanted to make a deal. Looking at the man, the demon said that the mortal here had nothing to offer in return, but he could still listen, and decided to find out what the man wanted: revenge, power or freedom. The determined man said that he wanted all the demons to be removed from this world. For a demon, this deal was quite unusual, because they asked the demon to give him the power to expel demons, and in return the person could only offer this world. The madman began to shout that demons could turn this world into a real hell. It was then that Saint Jonah spread the justice bells throughout the world, giving people the power to cast out demons, and soon they were no longer a threat to them. However, meetings of justice were still held, the religious community only strengthened its power, politicians used the current situation to eliminate the opposition, and businessmen to strengthen their competitiveness. All people knew that the real demons had long been exterminated, but they only covered themselves with devilish atrocities, and then opened the doors as they pleased. People suspected each other, were wary, and blamed one another, and in the end a bloodbath began that engulfed everything around. Ironically, the demons returned and even occupied the tower, which was originally the stronghold of their exile, but for the survivors this no longer mattered much. Because real demons live in the hearts of ordinary people, and they don't even suspect it. But all this did not suit the girl very much, since she still did not understand why she was thrown from the tower and she almost found herself dying. Fortunately, the location research was successfully completed, and the research progress was 100%. Having praised the main character, the interlocutor sincerely believed that he was very cool, and all these artifacts in the tower and a thorough examination of each room were not at all necessary. Everything could be found out in this way. Van understood that this was not entirely true. He simply asked Demon Bersha, who signed the contract with Jonah, about everything. He is the boss of this dungeon. And as a member of the demon team, it was not difficult for the young man to contact his boss. The girl did not even suspect that the game in this dungeon is so dishonest. Demon players can directly obtain all the necessary information, and even receive various enhancements. No matter how hard the brave player tries, he will not succeed at all. Having signed a contract with a demon, you will need to give him something in return, borrowing his power, sacrifice a living person with all sorts of rituals. A lot of conditions are not in favor of the hero, and he could barely sell himself. In order for this transaction to be successful, it was necessary to make a sacrifice. As soon as the girl guessed about this, the young man immediately began to laugh, because it really looked funny. The sacrifice was successfully completed, because emotional stability is much more important than an unfulfilled deal with the devil. Thus, the player Yushan was eliminated. She was identified as a brave person. The Bloody Tower dungeon mission was completed and the demon team was crowned the winner. A side quest was also completed, which consisted of the need to make it to the end of the mission, as a sign of which a box with level F artifacts was presented. 2 players were killed and 20 points were received, and the player's level was raised to the second. Returning to his personal space, the hero also lost some artifacts, since their validity period had simply expired. Quest artifacts. Unfortunately, it was impossible to take with him, but this terrible oppressive feeling that haunted him after signing the contract disappeared. If he had not taken care of Yushan and allowed her to run around the tower on her own, he might have been left without his last victims. In any case, the young man thought that players running away with rewards and not fully fulfilling the terms of the contract were not such a rare occurrence. After completing the mission, the system announced that the player Wang Wan had completed a high-level dungeon and received a special artifact called the Demon Codex. Van was incredibly happy about the presence of this artifact and the increase in the player's level to the third, since the title system had now started, and the data would be updated when the next dungeon was launched. The hero had already managed to reach the third level, and those newcomers who came to the game with him would never catch up. Vaughn continued to work hard and was going to surpass the elders of this game. Having come to his senses, the boy still realized that he had already finished with the dungeon, and now it was necessary to figure out what exactly happened in reality. Fortunately, after what happened earlier, he was no longer injured, so in theory everything should be fine. Meanwhile, events continued to happen in real life, namely in the ambulance. The so-called doctor and a girl wearing glasses sat not far from Wang and closely monitored his condition. Turning to the doctors, the lady did not understand why they were not helping her classmate at all. Suddenly, a guy from the car exclaimed that everything was fine and he was monitoring the young man's condition. This guy turned out to be the same scoundrel who made a deal with the devil. It was Jonah. Some time later, an ambulance arrived at a strange building near the logo of the game development company was located. Jonah began to report that the target had been successfully captured, and it was necessary to fill out documents, but he wanted to leave this to his sister Sheila. Researcher Sheila sincerely believed that the capture of Wang Wan was carried out too slowly. Information about other samples from this batch had already been sent long ago. Moreover, she was brought into the building with a gift. She was a girl who was very worried about the fact that several armed men stood behind her. According to Ion, he thought that nothing could be done about it, because the target was showing signs of life and they needed to act in accordance with the current situation so as not to arouse suspicion. But this was indeed shocking news, which is why Sheila decided to find out what exactly the interlocutor meant by signs of life. The guy couldn't say for sure, but perhaps someone moved the body from the starting point or it was just some kind of system problem. After all, at the moment the body was just lying there and showed no signs of life. It was indeed very interesting, but in any case, there was still a whole month until the arrival of Obraztsov's next batch, so it was necessary to thoroughly research this one. A little embarrassed, the girl realized that this guy looked pretty cute, he would give her a lot of pleasure, she was sure of that. If the data was not transmitted on time, then Sheila realized that the old man would be unhappy. Therefore, the laboratory worker urgently began research, and the hero gradually began to come to his senses. The young man was simply shocked, because he had not spent much time in the game, and when he returned, he discovered that his real body had been stolen by some people, which is why he could not enjoy the game and become stronger. Considering that they went down there by elevator, this room had to be located somewhere underground. There were CCTV cameras everywhere, electronic locks on the doors, and a ventilation grill near the ceiling. While in the system, Wang thought that all these F-rank cards could be used to escape, but it was necessary to think about how best to combine the existing artifacts. If everything is done correctly, then escaping will not be difficult. However, escape could not solve the main problem that arose. The hero really did not know the goals of these people, and did not know what forces they had. He had no idea what relation they had to the domain of the gods, and also how they managed to find him. In this situation, as soon as Van runs away again, they will immediately find him again and drag him here. This is why you cannot act rashly, because if you reveal yourself, your enemies will definitely have an unconditional advantage. Therefore, now Van decided that he needed to collect as much information as possible without revealing himself, which was much more difficult than escaping. In principle, the young man could not worry about the state of his real body, lie quite comfortably, he could concentrate on preparing for the next dungeon. Without doing anything, he literally leaves his true body defenseless, nothing can be done about it, but there are still 12 hours before the start of the next game, you need to use this time to become stronger. Meanwhile, the guy received several friend requests from people with whom he was previously on a team. Su Miao wrote an apology for the hero, saying that everything happened too suddenly, but that player named Xiao Tian had to be taken out of the game due to his inhuman insight. Lu Xingjun also apologized, and said that fate brought them together on their life's path and brought them face to face with the blood curse. Thus, the guy realized that these guys must have sent these messages as soon as they left the game. It turns out that now they should have received a notification about the team's victory. The former team member even sent a video of a song he sang specifically for Wang. The hero, of course, appreciated this video, but soon turned it off and said that it was too much for him. Noticing that the former team members had not yet received notification of their victory, Vaughn realized that the best thing to do would be to tell them that he had accidentally won, fueled by communication problems within the Brave team. Suddenly, the sister sent another message, saying that she had one invitation to a special dungeon, there were no penalties for failure, and if the boy wanted, he could join. For the main character, this was truly a great chance to take advantage of such a wonderful opportunity, because it would be possible to become stronger. Thus, events continued to take place in a special dungeon called the Legend of an Unusual Village. Changnin was a quiet and cozy corner in which mining was developed, guests rarely visited, but not so long ago, because of a book found in one of the mines, something strange began to happen. Rumors began to circulate about evil spirits wandering at night, which caused considerable panic among the population. Archaeologist Professor Rhodes instructed 5 outstanding specialists to visit Changning and find out the truth in order to refute the rumors. The mission was successfully launched and events continued to take place at a hotel called Rosie. In this game, the main character has already realized that he is a professional detective, and that same old man is their customer. His name was Professor Rhodes, but now for some reason he was tied up and indignant, since he was an employer for specialists. The team was just busy searching for the book, which is why they tied up the old man in order to find out from him what he knew about this book, and if he did not tell this, he would remain disabled for life. Su Miao understood that, as a rule, the customer must hide some information, hire detectives to check some rumor for what else and have to pay. This is too radical a measure for someone who does not have any useful information. According to the hero, this was indeed a brilliant strategy, since under torture they could force the old man to tell everything he knew in order to better understand his thinking and desire, so they could do their job in the best possible way. But it was completely unclear why this dungeon did not provide a reward for completing the mission. Another team member explained that this is a special dungeon, the player cannot go here without a special invitation in the form of a ticket, and the reward is an end in itself called a runic writing artifact. This was the very artifact that Lin Yao mentioned. It distinguished the owner from the bulk of players and would become the basis of unique abilities. Upon reaching the 10th level, the player must decide on his specialization. Special artifacts are the basis for the development of specialization, or unique abilities. In addition, special artifacts themselves have incredible power. Coming closer to the main character, the girl could not believe that he really had the 3rd level, because she thought that he was not a beginner, and could probably hide his level and ranks. The team member couldn't believe that Su Miao chose such an assistant for herself, as if she wanted to lose this game on purpose. At the same time, the boxer successfully completed the mission. This old man was the head of an archaeological expedition, so the mayor of the city took the letters they discovered. He wanted to return them to himself, and for this he hired them, so the runic letters were with the mayor of the city. The target was discovered, and the team gradually began to prepare for the journey. This was indeed great news for everyone, since everyone present was prepared for the mission. One of the men had a master key card with him, so he would take the first car he came across and go to the mayor. For the main character, all this was indeed quite strange, because he saw that the other team members began to independently gather to the mayor. Van previously thought that they should all cooperate. This really should have been a collaboration between team members, except that the book that is the reward is only in 1 copy, so everyone wants to get it and will work alone. Therefore, success in this dungeon depends on the number of tickets collected. In order to bring as many friends as possible, in this dungeon I only have 6, 3 of which the girl had. As it turned out, Lin Yao gave one of the tickets to Wang so that he could unwind and at the same time practice, and she gave the second to a friend who really should have helped her, but left at the last moment. Looking at this ticket, Van could not even imagine that it was so valuable. As it turned out, this special artifact could only be obtained in this dungeon. Now the girl suggested that the young man probably felt guilty for accepting her invitation. It was actually just a joke since she saw the system alert after she sent the message, but she promised to take Vaughn with her and doesn't regret it at all. Still, Wang Wan thought about how it was possible to complete this mission, and suggested that it was necessary to complete the task before everyone else. For the interlocutor, it was funny, because she understood that this was a dungeon and they were of a low level, and even those 3 players were very good. The hero sincerely believed that when he is asked for help, he must give his all to do everything possible to win. In that case, they better move out quickly. It will be difficult when those 3 start rioting and the police block the traffic. Their skills are still not enough to withstand a large number of firearms. For Van, this came as a shock, because he did not expect that it would be possible to start riots in the city and some police would block the road. Su Miao remembered that her partner had only recently been here, and he himself was probably not yet accustomed to all the nuances of this game, but very soon he would be able to understand everything, that this was just a game, and the dungeon was nothing more than a playground inside. To interact effectively in this game, you need to complete missions quickly and efficiently, and you don't have to worry about the consequences. That's the whole policy of these games. The young man managed to see what the other team members did to an ordinary NPC, so now they are planning to kidnap the mayor or raid the city hall. Grabbing the phone, the boy immediately decided to act and told the police that several thugs were going to attack the mayor, because as a good citizen, he should have reported this. Shortly after this, Wang planned to go to the police station and write a statement, but the ally did not understand what this had to do with their main goal. All this was necessary in order to mobilize all the forces in the dungeon, limit the enemy's freedom of action and ensure maximum convenience for maneuver. Even the NPC needed to be freed to be safe and free from violence. Although this method was indeed quite unusual compared to what other players use, it was likely to be unusually effective. Meanwhile, events continued to happen on the main street of Chongning, where the car was driving with the main character. He learned that marks can be left on the map, so that they can mark shops, a hospital, whatever they meet along the way. All such dungeons had a similar infrastructure. However, it would not be superfluous to explore the environment. In addition, it turned out that the system also had a function that could be used to study the situation. The girl nearby also decided openly that there was no need to worry about the NPCs hearing their conversations, any actions or words of the player for them, white noise. The main character at the same time noticed that judging by the architecture and appearance of passers-by, the actions in this dungeon take place in America in the 1920s, the administration's policy should also correspond. If the enemy's strength is approximately the same as Su Miao's, then relying on NPCs is really not a good idea. That is why Wang Wan began to think through a plan, and did not understand whether he should cause discord, or make a surprise attack, or even mobilize the nearest station troops. However, Su Miao explained to him that although they can compete with each other, this is still a cooperative dungeon, so they cannot enter into open confrontation. They needed to live in harmony and agreement, but the young man did not understand whether cooperative dungeons were really invented for this, so that one player would be responsible for the actions of the other. It was a great line of thinking, and they couldn't wait for the day when Van would be punished by the game's creators for such actions. In any case, they had already entered the police station, and understood that any information would be useful to them. The people here are quick to hand and bold to the point of insolence. Who knows, maybe they will really be able to surprise. As soon as the company entered the building, a bullet immediately flew near the young man. As it turned out, the shot was fired by a policeman who exclaimed that all demons must die. The instant hero began to try to hide from the bullets, and did not understand why people here are so aggressive. Now no one understood what to do, because it was impossible to talk to some NPCs at all. First, it was necessary to try to pacify all the NPCs, since they were here along with Su Miao. In order to kill the NPC, the lady found nothing better than to break into the building with a sword. The brave girl began to take out her sword in order to attack the policeman, who continued to shoot. The main character also came out of hiding and began to move towards the man. In order to pacify the NPC a little, Van used a force spell. The attack from Wang Wan continued. Grabbing her giant sword, she wanted to strike. The situation gradually calmed down, and the boy said that he had information that a group of thugs had infiltrated Chongning. And in order to be more convincing, Su Miao stood nearby with her huge sword and said that they actually came for help. This plan actually worked, and the police chief gave his guests a good reception. They decided to tell the boss that Wang and Miao were specialists hired by Professor Rhodes to investigate cases of evil spirits and ancient books found in the mine. Now they have learned that a group of thugs want to steal ancient writings. Therefore, for security purposes, the police had to talk to the mayor about handing over these books. But the policeman did not believe the old man, saying that there had been no evil spirits and thugs in this city for a long time. According to the man, this old man said that he left the criminal life in the past and returned here even after his years, but in fact he just smelled the smell of money and jumped here. The policeman also suggested that the thugs were sent specifically to steal ancient books and use such sneaky methods to divert the attention of the police. Thanks to these words, the team realized that, in other words, the books were really in the possession of the bandits. The hero also decided to find out about Mr. Chief whether anything criminal had happened in the city lately. Fortunately, nothing criminal happened. In his youth the policeman was the most skilled shooter in this city. Not a single rat would dare get close to him. For several years there had not been a single major case in the city. Su Miao decided to ask the boy why he asked the policeman about this. As it turned out, the young man had a side task, which was that he needed to find the real criminal, and the reward was to be given a dungeon coupon. Nevertheless, the team decided to go to the mayor and find out about the current state of affairs, and they also invited the policeman to go with them. Laughing, the man exclaimed that he would still remain here, but suddenly extended his hand and wanted to give the pistol to the hero. Such a gift really surprised the main character, because he did not expect that the policeman would donate his gun for such a cause. Waving his hand, the respectable man thanked for the visit and said goodbye to his guests. After such an event, Vaughn couldn't even understand what side mission he had launched this time. Not understanding what was happening, the boy even decided to ask his partner if he had any kind of buff after talking with his boss. After this mission they received a certificate. It was a temporary thing, a common thing in many dungeons, some sort of system feature that helps players and NPCs distinguish between friends and enemies. Having learned about such a find, the young man realized that it would be really useful, and it was not for nothing that they were sent to the mayor. The team headed together to the mayor in order to find the necessary item and complete the mission. Also, the police gave them an investigation warrant, so it won't be difficult to surround the police station. Grabbing the pistol, the boy prepared to attack, and was already not far from the door to the mayor's house. Looking through the peephole in the door revealed nothing and it was safe to enter the building. But the girl didn't like this approach at all, which is why she decided to use her own personal methods. Using her giant sword, Su Miao was able to easily break down the door, allowing them to enter the building. The NPC was simply in shock, because he did not understand why his new comrades did this, because they had just almost destroyed the police station. The team explained that they were looking for leads and equipment, because that is why they were invited here. The entire second floor was literally destroyed, and the man was simply in shock, because he simply ordered to find the book, and at the same time they destroyed most of the building. According to the team, everything was in order, because they had already submitted a statement to the chief of police and he allowed them to conduct their own investigation. All the police went to arrest, so they were forced to find what they were interested in, and they shouldn't worry about it, because everything was legal, because they are not like those three thugs. Meanwhile, the girl found some strange find, and asked the young man to come up. As it turned out, it was a portfolio, and there were some notes that the police received a message that at night an evil spirit was seen walking in an orphanage. There were also records about the orphanage, the mines, and the bandits that the police chief mentioned, as well as the mayor. All of this needs to be put together into an overall picture, and the books should be in one of these places. According to the information received from the NPC, this should be a chain of interconnected quests or something like that. However, the main task was to find books. The girl was not very interested in the plot. In any case, they had a warrant, so they had to search places along the way. Looking around, the team also discovered that Professor Rhodes had long since fled because he was afraid of all the incidents that happened at the police station. Grabbing the keys from the police station, the young man thought that taking the first civilian car he came across was not a good idea. That is why they decided that they would borrow another car for a short time, which was parked right next to the site. Their comrades at that moment were supposed to be fighting with the police somewhere near the city hall, so if they go there is a high probability of meeting them. In this case, they must go to another place, otherwise there may be confusion on which side they are in this mess, and in order not to run into them, it would be best to go to the orphanage. Suddenly, Su Miao remembered that the young man managed to survive the previous game, and he should have been given a lot of points, which is why she decided to find out where exactly he was going to spend them. Boy, while I didn't even know what to spend these points on, logically in the early stages you need to become stronger as soon as possible. However, he didn't really trust these gacha things. He couldn't shake the persistent feeling that even if he spent all his points, nothing worthwhile would come of it. Regarding this, Miao admitted that the young man was indeed right. Now he should invest in improving living conditions in his personal space. The available functions and capabilities in the game depend on his level. For example, at the 3rd level, a system of ranks and titles will become available to him. At the 5th, special pool systems. At the 7th, a special system for improving characteristics, and so on. One could say that the real game begins only after the 10th level, when you choose a special artifact, because in the early stages there is no point in immediately spending the points received, since at low levels nothing useful will drop from the pool, and most of the low-ranking abilities and artifacts of a beginner will soon become useless. And if the hero really can't wait, then he needs to wait at least until the 5th level. Then the system of special pools will make it much easier for him to get what he needs. Features and abilities as you progress through the game were designed to allow the player to play for a while, evaluate their abilities, and find their strengths. Newbies really had to get used to the game and learn all the mechanics. Even if you give them all the weapons and abilities at once, they won't know how to use them. Continuing to drive the car, Miao decided to ask her friend how long they had been driving. Suspecting nothing, the boy replied that about 10 minutes, no more. It was still a special dungeon, and it looked like they wouldn't be able to figure everything out quickly and calmly. Initially, the girl planned to invite the young man here so that he could practice and get used to the game. Su Miao really praised her comrade. After all, his head works well. This is lacking in most beginners who are not able to make a decision at a critical moment. Right now the team will have a great opportunity to practice. The determined hero shouted for Su Miao to hold on, because they were about to shake. The frightened friend could not understand what was happening, because she expected that the fight would begin now. But the main character decided to do differently and greet the monster's young lady in a different way. Driving towards the monster at maximum speed, the boy did not stop and decided to shoot down the scoundrel. The car crashed straight into an unknown creature, which caused an explosion and smoke began to dissipate. As soon as the smoke gradually began to dissipate, fragments of the car and multiple damages were visible. Being wounded, the main character realized that road safety is an important factor, and he will need to pay more attention to this in his next life. Meanwhile, fights between thugs and police took place in the city, causing explosions to be heard. Gradually, the main character and his companion climbed out of the car. The girl lost 27% of her life, her left arm and stomach were also damaged, and there was a bleeding debuff. As it turned out, Meow herself got out of the car and finished off this monster. It wasn't that painful, but Van only laughed because of this. After all the abilities that he uses are auxiliary, and if he wants to jerkily fight the monster, then might take a little risk. Still, the girl guessed exactly how the young man won last time. The companions began to wonder whether this monster really was that same evil spirit. The monster was more like a zombie, but he was able to crash a car like that, so his physical strength is much greater than that of ordinary zombies. The hero decided to ask his partner how many monsters of this level she could cope with using all her strength. For Meow, 5 or 6 monsters will not be a problem, and considering that zombie monsters have no brains at all, it is possible to win even if there are many more of them. Looking around, Van decided to find out if she could defeat all the monsters if there were 100 times more of them. There really were a huge number of monsters, and they gradually began to approach the team of daredevils. The frightened girl began to look for shelter, and together they ran into some building, because they saw that the enemy was already close. In order to close the door to the room, the team began moving a giant cupboard of food. At that moment, zombies on the street were shouting that they had discovered aliens and wanted to destroy them. The young man could not understand why there were so many monsters. After all, if these were ordinary zombies, they could not run and jump like that. They are so strong that they can even talk. Meow then suggested that these monsters might be small bosses at a low level, but it was absolutely impossible to do so much in one go. Another entrance to the building was destroyed nearby, causing the team to realize that hiding indoors was simply futile. In order to somehow get out of this situation, the girl decided to use her huge sword. The brave lady literally began to chop down all the zombies in her path, clearing it so that she and her team member could move on. The path was indeed difficult, since a large number of opponents were waiting for people to leave the room. Previously, the house was empty, but as soon as the team entered, the zombies immediately sensed it and decided to attack. One of the zombies was a convenience store clerk, and he also shouted for the strangers to get out of their houses. After thinking a little, the boy suggested that the zombies were fighting over uninvited guests, and maybe it would be right if they opened the doors. Thus, Vaughn realized that it might be safe if one of the people invited them into the house on their own. But the girl didn't care at all about this, since the whole city was full of monsters, and the boy was waiting for them to open the door for him. In fact, it seemed to the hero that there were not only monsters in this city, and there were also survivors who had not yet turned into monsters and were trying to survive. One of the team members had a little more than half his life, and he wanted to know how things were on the street now. Looking at the situation outside, the girl discovered that the monsters had not dispersed, but they had no intention of entering the room. With the help of a flying drone, it was possible to investigate the situation outside without leaving the room. Vagrant also realized that they had previously assumed that rooms that were not open were inactive areas that they could not enter. One of his piercing rings didn't go to waste as it gave them a place to rest. Now it seems that this place is much more complex than they actually thought. Throughout the day, large-scale police patrols take place in this small town, not only with strong firepower, but also with extremely fast response speed. After sunset, monsters appear on all the streets. When faced with them you have to run away. This turns into an endless chase. The man assumed that the customer had previously said to look for the item, but he didn't even give time to collect information. Each part from beginning to end is a high-intensity battle and he always feels that something is wrong. At that very second, someone decided to knock on the door and decided to ask if anyone was at home. The team immediately heard this, and did not understand who could bring such an unfavorable time to them. It was the main character along with his partner, who apologized for the trouble, saying that they were agents hired by the police, and asked to open the doors for them. Such an event made the man think, and he thought that all this was happening for a reason. Everyone began to see the catch in this situation, because they thought that perhaps their former comrades would let monsters into the house. In such a large city, it was possible to accidentally run into each other, especially if you were hiding in a safe place. 3 people thought that 2 more people would make the area unsafe, or they could use it as blackmail. At the same time, the zombies gradually began to approach the house, because they saw that people were standing nearby. Although the team did not know what abilities Wang and Miao were using to create a safe zone, the 3 of them were already hiding inside the room. The young man then realized that if the people in the house directly revealed their identities, then there was a high probability that this shelter would be destroyed and they would be transferred to another. Therefore, it was necessary for Miao to protect the hero from the monsters. This would give him some time for his plans. It was then that the hero began to think that the doors and windows in the house are completely closed. Thanks to this, they cannot see what is happening on the street. Their field of vision is limited, so the peephole in the door is his trump card. With all his might, Van began shouting that people needed to open the door quickly, because the police station had important tasks that required the cooperation of every resident, so he was going to pretend to be the NPC whose task he had come to complete and trick them into opening the door. Thus, the tramp realized that the travelers were looking for residents who could provide shelter. If the drones had not been deployed in advance, they might actually have succeeded. This only made the man laugh, and he thought that since they couldn't find out what was going on inside, they shouldn't blame him for relying on the low intelligence of the people who were trying to enter the house. Starting to scream with all his might, the tramp exclaimed that no one would open the door to a despicable stranger on the night of murder, and ordered him to leave immediately. In this game, the people who were in the house clearly had the advantage and the confrontation continued. The zombies tried with all their might to kill the strangers, but Miao did everything possible to protect her comrade. The girl did this with great difficulty, since there were indeed a lot of opponents, and gradually she began to get tired. However, she was very glad that her comrade really trusted her, because she had never been a person who knew how to think. Boss had previously yelled at her in real life because she couldn't do anything on her own and didn't show any initiative. The boss also rejoiced in front of management about the problem that arose due to the initiative of their temporary employee, which is why they will definitely punish her within the company and sort everything out. Xiao simultaneously admired and feared smart people who could easily solve problems. The same thing happened after she entered the divine realm, and was unable to do anything other than constantly swing her sword, always relying on brute strength. Although the girl quickly adapted to the battle and the sword only became stronger and stronger, she still could not get rid of the feeling of confusion and helplessness. But now the situation was completely different, since she had the advantage of her partner. Although there were indeed a lot of monsters, Su Miao was sincerely confident that she could cope with them. There was faith in victory because Wang Wan could indicate the true path to follow. This forced Miao to move on, and she did everything possible to finish off absolutely all enemies. In everything that Su Miao did not understand, she trusted Wang Wan, namely in negotiations and strategy, as well as layout and game. She shed her blood here in order to cover him and help kill people on a battlefield that was impregnable to her. Meanwhile, the young man did everything possible to finally get into the house. But he couldn't do anything at all, because the man inside the house wouldn't let him in. All this, of course, upset the girl, because she thought that her companion could easily come to an agreement. The boy continued to convince the lady that everything was in order, and he almost opened the door for them. The dissatisfied lady asked Van to forget about everything she asked him to do and was going to resolve the conflict herself. Frightened, the ally began to argue that if she wanted to break down the door, then she needed to wait for him to hide. The girl didn't care at all about this, and she hid under the doors with all her might in order to get into the room. Thus, it turned out that their teammates turned to them for help. Due to the lack of team chat, a misunderstanding arose. According to the hero, all this really was a misunderstanding. There are no people who would not consider it reasonable to unite and cooperate. The team was having a pretty rough time at this point as their 2 allies were communicating with each other while they were fighting the zombie. The young man apologized to his new team and said that he was a newbie and had almost no skills. But the man had a different role, so he did not want to participate in the battle unless absolutely necessary, since he was an expert in ignoring, and if he does not deal any damage or use any skills, then the points gained in the game will be doubled. In addition, The man believed that for a monster of this size, it did not make much sense for him to do everything in his power. This would exceed the upper limit of the combat power of people like him, that is, the unemployed. The combat power of the entire team was undiscovered, so there was no point in waiting for anything, and relying on safe zones that they get with the help of special artifacts is clearly not a universal way, so the solution can only be to pass any tests based on certain conditions. This was indeed the case. Apparently they needed to complete certain tests or get to specific places in order for the attacks of these monsters to stop. It was then that the man realized that Su Miao had found herself a newcomer as a consultant in order to compensate for her shortcomings. In general, they decided to exchange information. Now it was clear that the main thing here is not the search for objects, but the main difficulty lies in collecting intelligence data. The original clue pointed to the city hall, but due to the fact that the place is too big, instead of driving almost a whole morning to get there. Of course, it was possible that the reason for the delay on the way was the driver. If it were not for the person, but for the details picked up on the road, perhaps they would not have been able to find the right place. Perhaps because the city hall is located next to the police station, they encountered a large number of armed NPCs, so they did not have time to thoroughly investigate everything. Upon entering, the mayor was nowhere to be found. The only thing the team was sure of was that the items in the mission were not in the mayor's office. After that, these people walked around the city, and those who pursued them turned into monsters with the onset of darkness. It may seem that they had the whole day to explore, but in fact they could not do anything at all, including, for meager gaming experience. Looking at the newcomer, the man decided to find out what he knew, because he had a police camp buff, and it was necessary to find out if they had found any useful clues. The young man gave the book, because he had already gone through all the information from the police, which may be connected with evil spirits and ancient books. The book stated about the bandit mines and orphanages. Now it was clear that Wang and Miao came here not in vain, but to go to the orphanage where the evil spirit was first discovered. Initially, they did not come here, but came by car, but there were too many monsters roaming along the road, so it became impossible to move by car. So they tried to walk, but the distance was much longer than they expected, so unless one of them has the ability to enhance mobility, then otherwise this mission will not be possible. Luckily, the pink-haired girl had the ability to enhance the team's mobility, but she didn't see the point in this, since the shelter was literally across the street. Hearing this, the hero fell into a stupor, because he did not expect that they were really so close to the shelter. Some time later, events continued to occur near the shelter. Soft toys were scattered throughout the orphanage, and frightened children ran around the rooms. One of the little girls again heard some strange sounds, and thought that the evil spirit was probably coming again. Absolutely all the children were very scared. They were even planning to go back to sleep, but one boy had the idea that they could secretly go to the river to fish. The blue-eyed girl decided to calm everyone down, and asked them not to talk nonsense. It was not easy for the teacher to explain this to the police, and if these rumors spread, it would affect their adoption in the future. But they didn't agree that they would fish and look for rabbits at night, and eat less during the day, so that the teacher wouldn't go from house to house and ask for help if there wasn't enough food. In addition, such evil things as evil spirits cannot exist in the world, according to the girl. At that moment, the other children already saw that the hand of the evil spirit was making its way to the girl and probably wanted to harm her. Suddenly, the stranger touched the girl and exclaimed that she was very interested in the evil spirits they were talking about. The frightened girl started screaming that the evil spirit was here, but it was just Wang Wan who wanted to talk. Meanwhile, the teacher woke up from a loud noise, and did not understand how the kids could still not sleep. At that same second, she saw several men talking to the children and telling them not to be afraid and to come up to talk to their older brothers. There were also two girls in the room who started making a mess and were looking for something. All this was very scary, and the nun was very frightened, which is why she fell into a stupor. Dropping a handheld lantern, the girl attracted attention, and the hero immediately noticed her. Trying to be kind, the young man greeted the girl and wanted to explain what they were doing. But the nun didn't care at all. She took out a knife and ordered everyone to move away from the children. The girl tried with all her might to protect the children and began waving a knife in order to drive away the strangers. Suddenly, the young man approached some strange door, and under his own weight it began to fall. Fearing for the guy's fate, the hermit began shouting at him to be careful. It seemed that they became best friends, because the man began to save the guy from danger. Then the E-team heard a strange noise, which is why they turned around to see what happened. As it turned out, the hermit decided to save the child, because he saw that he was in danger. Su Miao immediately decided to find out where Wang Wan was, because he seemed to have disappeared and was nowhere to be seen. At that moment, the hero was pressed by the door, because it fell on him and he could not even move. Fearing for the fate of her comrade, the girl began to cry and asked if Van was still alive. Fortunately, the boy was still alive, and he barely made his way through the debris of the door. The team member previously told Van that he was too unlucky. On the way here, the monsters looked at him intently, and now even the furniture is attacking. At that moment, Van was only thinking that, in theory, by taking advantage of the abilities of the people around him, he could replenish his personal luck account, but apparently this is not the case. The artifact of luck is indeed very difficult to use. Having released the girl, the hermit told her to be careful, because just now she was in danger. The hero began to make fun of his new comrade, saying that he did not expect that Olding turned out to love children. As it turned out, the hermit had a side mission, thanks to which he needed to protect children. Each player had their own personal objectives, and the number of key NPCs in the game including police officers, teachers, the mayor and gangsters was exactly the same as the number of players. The last remaining mission belonging to Su Miao should be related to the mine, but these vague mission descriptions, they are more like a description of their personality. Approaching the nun, the man asked her if she really was a teacher, and if so, then she should help in the search. The embarrassed woman really didn't mind helping, she just asked that no one touch the children. This behavior displeased the hermit, and he said that he simply wanted to find out information. Blushing, the nun had no idea that the travelers simply wanted to find out rumors about evil spirits in the city. In fact, all this happened recently. One of the girls went to play by the river at night, and when she returned, she said that she had seen spirits in the mining area opposite. The girl suggested that perhaps the evil spirits appeared because of the ancient book that was dug up in the mine. Many in the city said that they were the ones who disturbed the evil spirits. These events greatly confused the team, and they began to guess that the man who hired them was really difficult. Apparently the problem was in the mine, and it was located on the other side of the city. If they immediately went there, there might be difficulties along the way. The hero continued to think about everything he had heard, and asked the teacher to ask one more question. After all, if you think about it carefully, the professor was invited by the mayor of this city. And since this was really the case, the team wanted to find out who the old man was with them all this time. Looking at the old man, the girl could not understand who he was, and her reaction was ambiguous. Soon she grabbed her knife and started screaming for the stranger to die. Fortunately, the team managed to stop the nun in time, and she did not harm the old man. Approaching the elderly man, the young man asked him to explain what exactly was happening here. After all, it was completely incomprehensible why everyone in the city wanted to attack them as soon as they saw the old man. Beginning to get very angry, the old man shouted that he did not know why he was being attacked, and the mercenaries he hired were required to find what he wanted and nothing more. The whole team was really surprised, because they still didn't understand why they took this old man with them, and then they finally realized that he was a key figure in this mission. In order for the elderly man to speak, radical measures were taken. The main character pointed a gun at his boss and ordered him to speak. After all, the conditions of the mission require that the employer be alive, but it was possible to torture him. Sighing heavily, the man said that this happened last month. He received a letter from the mayor of Channing City, which said that a strange ancient book had been discovered here. Something strange happened in the excavated mine. It affected the work of the workers, and the man hoped that he could restore everything. But as a result, as soon as he read the above text of the letter, an accident occurred, and a white light engulfed the entire city. After that, everyone in the city began to behave like this and began to attack the old man. Having decided to stop tolerating these antics on the part of the nun, Su Miao exclaimed that she would now resolve this conflict. Her method of resolving the conflict turned out to be really very effective, since after a strong blow to the stomach the nun stopped being indignant. The upset man explained that he just wants to return this book to return everything to the way it was before. Meanwhile, the main character had a side quest completed to find the real criminal, and was given a coupon for a special item as a reward. The old man really caused all this, at least it was the truth, which is why he began to beg to be released. But the guy understood that this was not the whole story, and there was something else behind it. After all, something happened when they first arrived in the city, and it was unclear why others did not know about it, and why the old man decided to restore this anomalous ancient book, and since this was the last spell he cast, it is unclear why then he does not know, where is the book, because this happened a month ago, and it is not clear what the scoundrel was doing all this time. Leaning towards the professor, the young man continued the interrogation, because the magic with which lies work wonders must be interconnected with words. The young man was looking forward to the professor's speech, because he had to explain everything that was happening here. It was unclear to the team what happened or what they were even talking about, but the description of the mission given by this NPC was completely inconsistent with the information they received. Probably the old man is deliberately misleading them. He has big problems, and if he doesn't sort them out, he will waste a lot of time. Suddenly, the old man seemed to go crazy and began to laugh loudly. The main character noticed that something was wrong with his interlocutor and ordered the team to be careful. As soon as the old man stood up, a powerful explosion immediately occurred, which destroyed everything that was in the area. The other team members did not understand what was happening, since they only saw the explosion, but did not understand what caused it. Everyone tried to escape from the explosion and from the blast wave that was formed. It was obvious that the ceremony was almost over, and the team just needed to listen to the old man and be here quietly for 3 more days, but as a result, they attacked the city hall, ransacked the police station, stole cars, crashed into buildings, broke into houses, and vandalized spiritual aura of the entire city. Thus, the hero realized that the old man had the book all the time. His goal was to delay their research in the city for 3 days in order to delay time. This all meant that their goal was to find the spirit rune document, not give the spirit rune document to Professor Rhodes. In order to confront the villain, one of the team members used an E-level ability, the fireball technique. It was an extremely powerful spell. The bald man began to attack and shouted that this game would end right here and now. Using all his power and strength, the team member wanted to complete the battle he had started and get a rare artifact. Another team member jumped out with a machine gun and started shooting straight at the old man. The battle continued, and the scoundrel used a magical shield to stop the attack. The joyful pink-haired girl believed that the battle was already over, since they had a colossal advantage over the enemy. There was another blow from the bald man and it seemed that the old man was already dead. Unfortunately, the blow hit the girl with pink hair, causing her to be eliminated from the game. This shocked the man, because he believed that he was beating his opponent and not his ally. Feeling very angry, the man began to shout that his skills should not be blocked, because his CD was very powerful. The enemy watched everything that happened and drew conclusions based on the fighting style of his enemy. The attack from the scoundrel was successfully blocked, but a friend of the bald man named Luo Xiaonan turned to him to enable voice communication. It was only at the moment of Luo Xiaonan's attack that she and the professor suddenly switched positions. Perhaps it was the effect of using the spell attached to the holy relic in his hands. The ability to use something like this is probably very useful. This was followed by powerful attacks from the bald man. He hoped that in this way he could break through the old man's defense. But nothing worked out for him, and his lives gradually began to decrease, because the boss was much stronger. Su Miao also decided to intervene in the battle, and asked others not to interfere, since she wanted to handle it herself. By asking her allies to stay away from the enemy, Miao hoped to defeat him alone. The brave girl rushed into battle, hoping that she could easily win. The first blow should have instantly damaged the opponent, since an attack with such a huge sword was truly impressive. It just didn't matter what technique the girl used, because it would run out before it had time to properly activate. This event shocked everyone, since no one could have expected this magician to be so strong. In addition, the old man teleported and put Wang Wan in his place, who was attacked. Before his death, the main character managed to throw a coin, and this probably should have saved him. Under great stress, the lady continued to watch her ally, and did not understand whether she had killed him. Fortunately, Van was alive, and realized that the old man could change places with anyone, even with those who were not fighting him. The girl was actually very happy that her ally was alive, since such an attack would have easily killed him. Meanwhile, the battle continued, and the old man was already approaching the bald man who was applying a bandage to his hand. The enemy wanted to use a spell that was unlimited in time and was not passive, making it difficult to fight. The hermit asked the children to hide so that the old man could not harm them, since his attacks were simply destructive. Grabbing the knife, the man realized that this time he could not stay away. Then he offered a deal to Su Miao, saying later that they could cooperate, and the player who scored the last point would receive compensation from the other player in the amount of 1,000 points. After laughing, Miao didn't mind and decided to find out what she needed to do. This plan was quite easy. The effect of the old man's ability was that he could switch places with another person. That's when the hermit decided that he would just use a larger version of his ability, but it would affect everyone. This ability was that the hermit could summon an E-class ability called Dark Tentacles. These tentacles instantly enveloped the old man, which is why he was simply shocked, since no one had previously been able to attack him in this way. The enemy had nowhere else to run, and the hermit understood this. No matter who the elderly man switches places with, he can intensify the tentacle strangulation everywhere. This was indeed a good way to directly attack the old man as a caster. Only Su Miao decided that she was also going to fight the older man. Choke is a special type of continuous attack, so there was no need to worry that his sudden movement would cause any of his teammates to die. Thus, the hermit finally wanted to end this fight and kill the final boss. Suddenly, the main character shouted at his friend to stop and not do this. The ally could not understand what was going on at all, because Van stopped him at the moment when the boss was almost finished. In fact, everything was not so simple, and it seemed that the enemy was finally defeated. All team members instantly relaxed as they thought that the battle was finally over. In fact, it turned out that the player Su Miao was destroyed because her standard of living was 0. Not understanding what was happening, the hermit began to think that it was simply impossible to use these magical abilities, because his ally was killed instantly. Although on the other hand, his ability is actually very cool, and he thinks that he can brag about it later. The bald man shouted for his partner to be careful as the old man was about to attack again. Some dark tentacles began to crawl out from under the floor, and the hermit realized that the time had come. Now they did not know how to fight, since their strength was running out. With Su Miao's physique, it was difficult for the guys to imagine that even if they were strangled with all their might, it's not like they wouldn't die, not to mention that there wouldn't be a single scratch on them. Therefore, this boss's ability was not movement at all, and if they did not determine the ability for sure, they would not be able to fight at all. This is why the hermit realized that he must first find a way to escape before continuing the battle. At that moment, the bald man realized that absolutely nothing new had happened, because the hermit always deftly escaped. The evil magician did not like this turn of events, which is why he began to use his magical abilities to stop the enemy. To prevent the young man from running away, magic was used to block the exit. Now everyone was waiting for the enemy to finally meet his death, but this game still could not end, as if its difficulty was simply incredible. The smart hero at that moment pointed the gun directly at the back of the professor's head and ordered him not to move. The allies did not believe that Wang Wan could cope with the professor with just a pistol, and asked him to surrender, because they had already tried other artifacts that had no effect on the old man. In fact, the situation was different, and the main character sincerely believed that this time he had caught the old man. Because of this approach to destroying the enemy, the man really began to get nervous, since his magic was declassified. The guys from the team didn't understand what was going on, and thought that the young man simply decided to end the game by shooting himself in the head. Van decided to ask his allies if they remembered the moment when they parted and what happened then. Then they took a car from the side of the road to get to the city hall, but the journey was longer than they expected, so they drove all day and arrived only at noon. However, Wang and Su Miao left later than the allies and, less than an hour later, arrived at the police station located next to the city hall. These words aroused fear among the guys, and they did not understand how this was even possible. During their friendly cooperation with the police, it was not by chance that their employer, Professor Rhodes, was allowed to escape. They then ran into the professor on the side of the road before finally managing to make it to City Hall. Meanwhile, they left the police station at noon and went to look for an orphanage, but before they arrived, they noticed that Twilight had already arrived, but as soon as they met them, they immediately found shelter. The team really fought everywhere and carefully and followed different areas of the city. It was then that the hermit realized that the problem was that the time intervals did not match. It wasn't that the game had too little time for exploration. The point was precisely that only while they were with the professor could they really act effectively. This was indeed the case, because the professor from the very beginning was the only one who is an active person in Channon City. They, as players, are just many of his own inner personalities. Thus, the players realized that all the events took place in the professor's head. This kind of internal battle allows the main personality of a person to blame all the damage suffered on others. Therefore, the only way to really restrain the professor is if Van is determined enough to shoot himself. This decision caused concern for the bald guy, because he thought that this meant that they would be killed by the professor, or would have to die of their own free will. It was at that moment that the scoundrel began shouting that people had no chance from the very beginning, and ordered them not to create problems, but to simply stay in this imaginary town for 3 days and slowly die. But the main character realized that this city is actually not imaginary. The entire city of Channon, online, innocent souls who were killed by the professor came here to take revenge. Earlier, the mysterious girl explained that there was no point in staying in such a backward town. If the interlocutor really wanted to get involved in politics, then she could provide him with a seat in the state legislature. As it turned out, the blonde was the local mayor and promised the townspeople that she would govern the city of Channon well and would not go anywhere. At that moment, she ordered the miners to work harder because the entire city was counting on them. Some time ago, a new mine vein was discovered, and life for people in the city gradually began to improve. The plot involved another mysterious man who thought he was an old bastard. But also, if anyone dares to create trouble in the city, then he will have to risk his life, and he will make the scoundrel regret that he was even born in this world. Unfortunately, the defender of the city died over time. It was a murder, and no one knew who could have committed such a terrible act. The police chief promised himself that he would catch the killer at any cost. The nun also defended her children with all her might, and told them that lately there had been a little chaos in the town, but these are all adult matters, for now they need to grow up and not worry about anything. The kind woman promised that she would protect her beloved children with all her might. The evil professor began to laugh evilly and shouted that he had finally done it, and now no one could stop him. He ordered all people to give their humble souls as fuel for his eternal life. Due to the fact that all people gave up their souls, they turned into zombies who were completely different from people. Thus, the tramp realized that the truth was that the professor used a special runic artifact, with which he sacrificed the inhabitants of the entire city and extracted their souls from their bodies in order to launch some kind of magical ritual. As a result, a huge number of distraught and unwilling souls poured into his mind, turning him into a psycho. This meant that the role that the team took was 5 souls who managed not to lose themselves, and the side quests were actually hints that helped them find out the truth. The main character understood that, to be precise, it was more like an obsession. The team probably noticed that the people they came into contact with did not have names, and this is because they no longer have their own self. As a result, a strong obsession with their plan turned the killer, guilty of everything that happened, into a crazy schizophrenic. Therefore, the boss cannot actually be killed directly. His attack causes pain to the body, but over time the blood blocks are activated, and it is not surprising that the team was able to fight for so long even with impressive wounds. The hermit understood that what was truly critical in this game and what he had to worry about was time. A 3-day mission period was the time it took for the boss to fully complete the ritual and finally destroy these souls. After thinking a little, the main character realized that this completely ordinary city was created in order to make souls think that they are still alive, thereby delaying time. If they complete the game task well and honestly, then everything will completely stop as soon as the time comes. They suggested that they could continue in the same spirit as during the day, destroying illusions and relying on the living evil spirits, in order to ultimately drive the professor completely crazy. However, they, in the form of a visualization of his personality, are within attack range, which is tantamount to taking control of his body and committing suicide, so they themselves cannot complete the mission. The boss nevertheless decided to find out if there was a way to get the cross artifacts, because he could cover the main character if it was needed. Meanwhile, the old man continued to convince everyone that he needed help, because if he died, then the whole team would die with him. The madman claimed that if they helped him, he would allow the Stay Alive team to coexist with him, and it would not be difficult for him to find a new body once he took control of the launch artifact. There was only one way, which the old man mentioned: if someone shares the same body with him, they will naturally receive a launch artifact, and this is the subject of the mission. Still, the desperate man decided to find out if there was another method that could be applied in this situation. Fortunately, the main character had an artifact. It contained a bug with which you can separate the soul from the body, but there is no guarantee of success. There is a possibility that all souls will die. Closing his eyes, one of the team members admitted that this was probably the end. They only had 3 coupons for special items, and he could bet that everything would work out, but if they failed, then he would pay Su Miao a huge compensation. The main character sincerely believed that there would be no problems, because it so happened that he knew a little about sacrifices, and then hoped that the demons of hell would like the evil soul of the old man. After all, in the end, their enemy is also a separate soul, which shares one body with him, and therefore belongs to his own soul. After some time, it turned out that the sacrifice was indeed successful. Gradually, the situation in the city began to improve, and all the people turned from silent zombies into who they were before. It was all over, and the old man finally lost. Lying on the floor, he realized that he would no longer be able to control anyone with magic. After collecting the mission reward, the hermit suggested that Wang replace Su Miao, taking over her role if she still did not show up. Suddenly, Vaughn turned his attention to the body of an old man who was lying silently on the floor. As it turned out, he had a badge with the logo of the company that developed this game. A few hours later, the event continued to occur in Zhao's personal space. The girl was taking a hot bath and thinking that this time the mission had failed again. Suddenly, she received a notification that her friend Wang Wan wanted to call her. The young man decided to tell his sister that he had received a sacred relic called a runic artifact, and decided to find out how best to give it to her. As soon as Lady realized what her comrade had told her, she immediately fell into a stupor, because she did not expect that Van was capable of winning this mission. Still, the girl came to her senses and said that this was really cool, after which she asked to hurry up and help her understand how to get this sacred relic. Looking at the runic artifact, the hero discovered that it had characteristics such as soul and knowledge. This caused disappointment for Xiao, because she assumed that one of the characteristics would be the soul, but she thought that the second characteristic would be life, a contract or something like that, but it turned out to be knowledge. Van still didn't understand what was the matter, and what difference it made at all. What characteristics did this artifact have? In fact, in order to increase your own level, you can synthesize a special elixir from 2 sacred relics of class E, but the success of the synthesis and the value of the resulting elixir directly depends on the quality of the relics used. For example, if she wanted to upgrade her status to that of a mercenary, and for this she needs to synthesize relics with additional characteristics, contract or war, and one of the derivatives of the word war is life. In short, this relic is not suitable for her, which is why Vaughn could keep it while she looks for a buyer to sell it to. If she finds a buyer, she will share the proceeds with Vaughn. After thanking the girl, the boy also found out how he could use this card. It could be used to increase the level or synthesize a task. He just needed to add 300 points. The young man needed to decide in advance on the desired level, because in this way he could avoid many difficulties if he clearly knew what exactly he needed. The lady started to get out of the shower and said that if Van needs a video call, then she will disconnect, because she is a little busy. Having accepted defeat in the last competition, Xiao thought that next time she needed to work harder and then she would definitely receive the desired sacred relic. Reflecting on everything that happened earlier, the heroes suddenly had a gun, as it turned out that even after completing the main mission, you can get rewards for many side tasks. He was also given the title of law-abiding citizen, as he cooperated well with the official forces of the game, and is a good citizen who abides by the law. Van has received the title Rampage. His driving is his weapon. When he uses any vehicle to ram, the damage is increased by 20%, with the damage taken by the vehicle being reduced by 20%. Another unusual title was called Report a Threat. The hero will not participate in the battle directly, but will look on the sidelines for ways to defeat the enemy. After 30 seconds of continuous observation, he will easily discover a weak point in the target. The attacking teammate will deal an additional 100% of incoming damage. Once the status is selected, it cannot be changed until the opportunity to change it is provided next time, so the system asked to be careful about this choice. Thus, Vaughn understood that the advantages of all statuses were really good, and it was no surprise that each of them could determine the player's fighting style in one way or another. The only problem was that he only had a few disparate abilities now, and they did not combine in any way between yourself. At that same second, he received a message that he had received 32 bonus points, and the number of points allows him to increase to the 5th level. Players who pass extremely difficult locations receive a special reward such as an individual entrance ticket to the location. Also, in addition to the reward was an exclusive Gacha card with open characteristics. This card is customized in accordance with the player's level, status, and key characteristics. Having started to cry, the boy was really very happy, because there was finally a place in the game where he could make good money. At the moment, he had only 199 bonus points, just in case it was necessary to leave 50 points in reserve. The remaining 149 could be pumped into reinforcement. The choice of weapon type will directly determine its development in military techniques. Basically, the attack's input damage will be most powerful when it hits 100% of the target's defective spots. If you choose the 3rd status, otherwise the hero thought that in most cards the additional characteristics would most often be the abilities of an assassin or an archer. And if you choose the rampage status, then everything here is also quite obvious. The attack will be aimed mainly at maps, with additional characteristics of vehicle buffs or direction of movement. Another problem was that he would have to fight not only in the divine domain. In addition, it was necessary to think in advance about your future status, mind, soul, and knowledge. These are the characteristics that were inherent in the artifact. God's infinite domain is a deadly game in which the player's actions are always limited, so he thought before. But in fact, there are many safety mechanisms in it, and the danger to life is not as great as it previously seemed. Most of the players the young man has met so far have adapted well and fairly quickly to the local conditions. Having accepted the fact that you cannot leave the game, you can only choose easy locations if the player does not have a goal to reach a high level or get as many sacred relics as possible. And for many people, the need to survive in the divine realm may not be felt as strongly as it actually is. Wang Wan has already completed the scenario 3 times, so he has a certain supply of points, which are a kind of support for him. The biggest threat at the moment is the mysterious organization that controls all gameplay in real life. While they have not shown their bad side, but they do not know that Van can return to reality. Escaping from here is not so difficult, but I know about their ability to find players in reality. It is too risky. The hero knew that he must use this opportunity to penetrate deeper into the system and find out all the details of their plan before they decided on the next step. And if you want to conduct an investigation calmly, the first thing you need to do is remove all electronic monitoring equipment. Judging by the sounds coming from the other room, staff were passing outside from time to time. And since the organization is closely related to the divine domain, the possibility that the opponents have extraordinary strength cannot be ruled out, so it is worth considering a retreat plan in an emergency. In offline mode, except for sacred relics, other artifacts or equipment cannot be materialized in reality by downloading, so the most important thing you should rely on is your own abilities. Thus, Wang chose a status called Law-Abiding Citizen, and in order to get the best reward from the Gacha cards, the young man understood that he needed to use the most valuable artifact of Class E. This artifact was the same coin that slightly improves luck during use. Now Wang Wan was looking forward to an excellent reward, and was waiting for him to finally receive it. The reward actually included a large number of E-Class cards, thanks to which it was possible to choose the most useful ones. But there were no Class D cards at all, and there were only 3 Class E cards. It didn't seem like the lucky coin affected the gacha of cards, and this system probably had some limitations. And the other 6 cards are equipment and ordinary artifacts. There was also an E-Class item, which was a trap. Now he urgently needs a new effective ability, but so far he only has 4, which are no good. It seems that the remaining points can no longer be saved, so Wang is going to continue taking risks. Having looked at the new abilities, the hero noticed a certain pattern in the artifacts received. After all, if you use all these E-Class cards, then their combination is not so bad. Some time later, events continued to occur in the laboratory. A nurse was passing along one of the corridors. Suddenly, the girl stood not far from the temporary detention center where Wang Wan was. The nurse immediately began telling management that maintenance personnel were requesting permission to enter to perform daily maintenance on Temporary Isolation Unit 1. Entering the temporary detention center, the excited girl thought that the service department already had a lot to do, and they also had to take time for themselves. Lady first needed to record her survival status, then meet her physiological needs, and then do routine cleaning, and she felt like she would have to work overtime again today to eat. Suddenly, the lamp hanging above the main character suddenly went out, causing the office to become dark. Looking around, the nurse couldn't figure out what was wrong, and after thinking a little, she realized that the lamp had broken. At that same second, a young man appeared behind the girl, who actually crept up unnoticed and was not yet visible even in the darkness. One of the abilities gained was that it was possible to summon a small cunning creature that feeds on people's panic, causing supernatural phenomena in its radius and scaring people. This little creature was just able to distract the attention of the girl who worked in the laboratory. Snatching the syringe from the nurse's hands, Van decided to take action and presented it to the worker's throat. The smart guy asked the woman not to move and behave well, because then she would not get hurt. Realizing what had happened, the nurse did not understand how to act in this situation, and only tried to get out of the hero's grip. Resigned to her situation, the girl said that she would not resist, and then Van asked her about what kind of place this was. Taking a closer look at the syringe, Van decided to ask the girl what she was trying to inject him with. As it turned out, it was epinephrine, as well as mataphenol and a complex of physical supplements, mainly glucose and fat milk. The nurse didn't want to be misunderstood. The state of the body affects the mind, so they administer stimulants at the beginning of the appointment to help the players increase their squeeze. In order to find out whether the interlocutor was telling the truth, the young man used a spiritual tool called searching for thoughts. It was then that he felt that the nurse was very afraid of him, and she also had many other thoughts about her personal life. This item allowed him to spy on thoughts. A process like this was not like the mind reading he thought he would get, it was just jumbled information, mostly meaningless noise. Then the hero decided to let the girl go, but decided to find out why. They are the ones who are taking the players. Feeling very afraid, the lady explained that she was just a clerk who took care of patients and did not know such things. Laughing, the boy apologized and then said that he really misunderstood his sister earlier. As if nothing had happened, the girl said that everything was fine, because she was not hurt, but there was a walkie-talkie behind her, through which she wanted to report that she was in danger. Using his magical abilities, Vaughn apologized for what would happen next. A spiritual bomb was used that caused shock and awe, causing even the scary creature to become afraid. Of course, the hero would like to ask more questions, but unfortunately there was absolutely no time for that. You also can't hesitate any longer with the camera, since your magical abilities are running out. The blindness of the shadows created by the magic of light and shadow would not last long, which is why it was necessary to leave as soon as possible. The girl's body could also be used to sneak through the laboratory undetected. Some time later, the chamber was destroyed using some kind of stick. In fact, it was the nurse who destroyed it, or so it seemed. The hacking of the camera in the room was successfully completed, and now it was necessary to act. Taking the radio to the girl, she told the guards that she accidentally broke the camera in the temporary shelter, which is why management had to send a repairman. Suddenly, the guard replied that if you think about it, there is nothing wrong with it, so he asked the girl to go about her business, and he will report back when he can. Controlling the nurse's body, the hero conditionally ordered her to log into the system in order to leave this room. Thus, the door lock has been successfully opened, and physiological monitoring replaces her body, which, despite the discrepancy in data, at least does not cause alarm unless it is turned off for an extended period of time. Finally, a slight blurring of the memories she had before she fell into the coma was applied, so that when she woke up, she thought it was a dream. The escape was successfully completed, and Wang Wan was very happy about it. Meanwhile, the workers noticed that the light in one of the corridors was turned off, as if the lantern had broken. A young man ran past the guards using a shadow step. The immersion into the real world began, in which, fortunately, supernatural abilities could be used. The guy also had another unusual card called Intelligent Resistance. it allowed him to significantly reduce the level of urgency of the issue in the minds of those involved. The effect was influenced by the number of targets dealing with matter. As it later turned out, the environment in which the player lives in reality, to a certain extent, influences the type of world in which he finds himself. To hastily send the paper to the higher laboratories, this connection is perhaps even more obvious in the copy with the holy relic. Thus, the boy realized that there was a way for the outside world to look directly into the player's god's domain, but if it were that simple, they could actually see it, side by side through brain waves, hormones, and the like. The lab worker also said that even in extreme cases, only such blurred images and sound were available, which made the gameplay very difficult to see. Soon the man came to his senses, and looking around he did not understand who he had just talked to, because there was absolutely no one in the room. At the same time, the hero had already entered the public recording room. There was a camera in this room that recorded Wang Wan's presence. Fortunately, he used the magic of light and shadow, with which I created a holographic image that can be projected into reality by manipulating the effects of light and shadow. Looking at the image from the CCTV camera, the security guard could not understand why someone was in the archive at lunchtime. For a researcher on the periphery, it is hard work to search for information during his lunch break. But the guard didn't even suspect that behind this hologram was Wang Wan, who had already seen information about players, relics, replicas, as well as professionals. This was the Federation, comprehensively studying the realm of the gods. The viewing angle of the hologram was very limited, and upon closer inspection it was very easy to find out that it was incorrect, but just right to deceive a stationary camera. Suddenly, another person entered the office. It was an intern, and the hero realized that he had to be asked to turn off the light source. It was quite easy, after which he realized that he could go into hiding, avoiding contact with people. In emergencies, Vaughn could also use the spirit tool to knock out witnesses. They erased the memory of seeing the hero, even using their bodies to hide his movements. Although the young man was new to the god realm, he had only just touched the edge of his transcendental abilities. But in reality, he managed to ignore the security system of the mysterious organization. These events made Wang Wan very happy, as he considered himself literally God. Suddenly, he fell to his knees and began screaming that his head hurt very badly. Probably the guy used too much of his powers, his mental energy is depleted, and the interface in reality does not prompt. His spirit was gradually starting to drift, and the empty blue was too dangerous, so he was going to find a place to rest. According to the schedule he just saw, the storage time here is 9 p.m. every day, and cleaning is even done once a week, so no one should come to the warehouse anytime soon and it is a safe area. Sitting down near the many boxes, the young man wanted to take the time to analyze the information he had collected so far. Confetti walkie-talkie needed access to information in the realm of the gods through the players, so it can be ruled out that they have access to the realm of the gods or are even the direct creators of the game. Whatever their intentions, they may be a little harsh, but ultimately they protect the safety of players in reality. As such, there was no need for Vaughn to reveal his identity or flee immediately. Now it is simply necessary to use the Federation's information to speed up the process of gaining strength in the God realm, and then strengthen your freedom in the Federation by becoming stronger. Due to extreme fatigue, Vaughn was about to take a short nap and began to stretch before going to bed. At that same second, a girl woke up and asked if it was really already 3 o'clock. Feeling genuine joy, the lady was very pleased as she realized that it was true that the boss would not know if she slept here secretly. The hero could not believe that there are people in the world who sleep at their own work. Trying to find her glasses, the girl saw absolutely nothing without them and literally searched by touch. Still, the box it was in fell, and Van had not yet gotten to his feet and was in a losing position, which is why he would probably have to fight. Looking at the guy, the stranger assumed that he was one of the members of the king's family. The girl later admitted that she saw Wang pass out and followed him to the ambulance to see if she needed to contact the school or his family. No one knew that she would be brought here against her will, would not be allowed to leave, and would be put in charge of cleaning in the logistics department. As it turned out, it was the same girl from the library who followed the main character to the hospital. Still, the boy wanted to find a way to help his interlocutor as soon as possible. In reality, the lady had no intention of leaving here, since she was fine, and after all, the Federation's benefits were indeed quite good. After all, she was provided with free room and board, insurance for 5 years, no overtime and a salary several times higher than in any average company. Her supervisor even said that she could contact her family after completing the regular course in 3 months, and gradually regain her freedom in a year. On the surface, the Federation was a giant conglomerate, and even on the periphery, a multinational company, for which the girl was not suitable for an interview, but for reasons of confidentiality, the headquarters, which is the core of power, is always short of people, and her boss said that there were many opportunities for promotion. These events literally shocked the young man, because he did not expect that everything would turn out this way, and even began to envy the young lady. Feeling dissatisfied, the boy decided to find out whether the player who woke up after the game would also be able to work in the company. But this already became an unexpected question for the girl, since she heard that someone said that Van's consciousness had passed into the game dimension, but in any case he was able to wake up. Wang Wan decided to continue the interrogation, and asked the lady if she knew what happened to the other players who were brought here. Unfortunately, she didn't know this. Now she could only move around the outer part of the building, the internal laboratories were inaccessible to her. Thus, the hero realized that here the girl really could not ask anything, and having regained a little mental strength, she would not be able to continue the conversation. After touching the girl, Van decided to act, otherwise there would be too many memories left and he was afraid that he would not be able to get rid of them. Smiling, Lin asked the hero if he was upset, because she saw it in his face. Suddenly he found himself in an inexplicable game dimension and woke up in a strange laboratory. This was truly dissatisfying. Although now the girl still didn't know much, she asked Van not to let anyone know that he was able to regain consciousness and asked him to wait for news from her. To understand how sincere the girl's intentions were, the young man used his supernatural abilities. This ability literally made it possible to look into human thoughts and analyze them. As it turned out, the interlocutor's life was indeed very difficult. She lost her parents early and became an orphan. This time she wanted to be useful to others, and do everything possible to be loved. Still, the boy decided not to harm such a kind girl, and immediately let her go. Smiling, he thanked her for her kindness, because only a few people were like her. Some time later, events continued to occur in the corridor of the laboratory where Lin was passing. Previously, Lady remembered that the hero was in a temporary chamber and they could just send him back. But the young man had a completely different plan. He arranged everything. The company would not attract anyone's attention if they returned now, and the rest would be explored next time. At that same second, the door behind Lin opened and one of the company's managers came out. The blonde instantly noticed the little sister from the logistics department and asked her to come up to him for a minute. Feeling great fear, the girl turned around and said that without permission she would not be able to access internal capital information. The guy calmed her down and said that everything was fine, because he was licensed. Also hinting at the mess, the interlocutor said that Lin would clearly need help cleaning up this room. Entering the laboratory, the hero noticed something very strange, which plunged him into a stupor. In one of the giant cells was his sister Su Miao, with whom they fought side by side in the game. Having started to use magical abilities, the blonde said that he was too lazy to move this defective material in order to destroy it. That's why he used a fireball and threw it straight at the material he wanted to destroy. As if nothing had happened, the guy asked the cleaning lady to clean up here, because that's what he called her here for. Now we are returning to the events of the past. They took place in the office of one of the companies in the city. The company in turn cried and apologized to little sister Su Miao, because she had helped her a lot, but she still couldn't cope with the task. The caring girl reassured her, because she had been at odds with her old boss for a long time, and now he would never dare to touch the intern again, even if he could leave the hospital. After this incident, Xiao was fired because she sent her boss to the hospital, which forced her to pack her things and leave. Luckily there weren't too many things, and it didn't take much time to get ready. The upset girl called her parents and said that she had bought a ticket and would come home at night and stay there for several days. But her mother immediately realized that Su Miao had probably accidentally offended someone again and lost her own job because of it. Feeling ashamed in front of her mother, the girl said that it was an accident, and was not a big insult to the boss in her opinion. Still, her mother forgave her, said that Xiao had always tried to achieve justice in this world, and invited her to come home, because her father was already cooking soup. At the same time, events continued to occur in the gaming space, where the lady was looking at the photograph. The photo showed her family, whom she missed very much. There were rumors among players that if a player turned professional, he would have a chance to redeem his return to reality. It was then that Xiao heard these rumors, which is why she gained hope of returning to the real world. The problem was that it was too difficult to make holy relics. She knew the recipe but couldn't find the words. Regardless of the recipe, if the player tries to make it, then all the power that he managed to obtain will essentially be thrown away. Immediately she received a message from Wang Wan, who said that it is possible to gain the ability of a barbarian by combining the life of nature and honor, a knight. This is a combination of life and nature, and then honor and war. This recipe is also suitable for her. Having received the professional recipe, Xiao was simply shocked. She was very happy that even after the end of the mission, Wang was still helping her. She recalled that someone was selling war, which means that all she has to do is draw one more glory and she's ready, in which case the recipe will be successfully completed. Suddenly, something started to hurt Xiao in the neck area, and she received information from the system that she had been in the game for 5 months, cleared her copy 47 times, had the 10th level and did not receive a profession template. Unexpectedly, the girl fell and seemed to be unconscious, because she could not control her fall. Because of the fall, the photograph in which she was with her parents was even broken. The player was assessed as having no potential and had lost his observational value. He was approved for selection as the carrier of the probe and his destruction began. All the player's memories had to be destroyed, because now he will be like a robot carrying out his mission. Starting to cry, Letty could not understand what had happened and assumed that they were simply trying to remove her from the game. Su Miao's fate was unknown, since it seemed that now she would never be able to continue playing the game again in her life. Fortunately, she came to her senses, and a new script was loaded, and the probe was activated. Having risen to her feet, Xiao behaved rather strangely, as if absolutely nothing had happened. Looking at herself in the mirror, the system determined that the girl was in really good working condition. Suddenly, in the system, a good friend Wang Wan started calling her because he probably wanted to say something. After answering the call, the young man immediately began to scream, asking how little sister Su Miao was feeling. Not understanding what was going on, the girl decided to find out what exactly Van was talking about, because such questions were quite strange. Trying to somehow ask about the girl's condition, the boy again began to ask if anything was causing her discomfort. It was amazing to him that Su Miao was still alive, because when he looked at her, it seemed like she was a different person, or when he gets injured in reality, this also comes back into the game. Starting to tie her hair into a bun, the girl replied that of course everything was fine with her, but she couldn't understand why there was such close attention to her person, and she turned to Wang Wan as a stranger, with whom she was almost unfamiliar.